All right. Very exciting news today. I just got permission from Kaho, who is the translator of, let's see, what is the full title? Quick Transmigration Canon Fodder's Record of Counterattacks. Yes, that is a mouthful. It is one of my top favorite web novels, especially in the Quick Transmigration series. Basically, it is one of the rare quick transmigration with a female protagonist in which, as far as I've read, which is what even chapter? It's over 1,300 chapters. Because I Patreon ahead. I think I'm on chapter 1354 or something like that. Was the last chapter I read. Somewhere in that ballpark. So yeah, lots of chapters. So lots of material to go through. And the main character is pretty great. She's actually not particularly overpowered, which is rare in the quick transmigration genre. And also, as I said, as far as I've read, up to 1354 or something, there's no romance directed at her. Like, she has no romantic entanglements with anybody. There are reoccurring other transmigrators, and she does have ongoing acquaintanceships with them, but no romance. She just is kind of surviving. The pattern for this story very much starts to fit into the Ningshu goes to a new world, and the plot has been ruined by a bunch of selfish assholes who think that they can ruin everybody else's life, and as long as they say they did it for true love, everything's okay. And reading this story made me very happy. I'm 100% sure the author must be a very bitter, aromantic, asexual. Like, maybe they're not, but in my heart, that's my headcanon. Because this is the bitter, aromantic, asexual, like, pinnacle. It's beautiful. So, very excited. I haven't gotten permission to translate the whole series currently, because the translator had not considered what permissions they want to give to audio recordings in the future. But to start off with, I did get permission to do the first 3 arcs. And by the time I'm done with that, Kaho said most likely will have decided what to do with permissions going forward. So thank you very much for the permissions, and I will go ahead and get us started on our first arc. The first arc is called the Campus Cultivation Crisis arc. Instead of arcs, generally they call them realms, so this is Realm 1, Campus Cultivation Crisis. But I'm going to go with arcs because I'm just used to saying that. As an aside, I recently, on my last stream, when I was addressing the other story that I started recently, Side Character Transmigration, the final boss is no joke, I kept having to stop the stream to Google how to pronounce names. And because previously I saw a guide and it turned out that guide was not especially accurate. So recently I found a actually much better pronunciation guide. It's called the Chinese Pronunciation Wiki. And I have been going over this guide and comparing it to the YouTube, so I'm not just blindly trusting it like last time. And comparing it to how people are pronouncing these names when they're speaking them on YouTube. This is actually way more accurate. And in addition, they have a section of their website. So, for example, let's say I want to know a specific name, and it begins with a C. Actually, since we're about to start Ningshu, Maybe I want to do that one instead. So let's go with the CH. Oh, wait, yeah, SH, yeah. So I can go down here, and I go SH, and then it has all of these stuff, and I can go, aha, shoe.
Shoe, 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 shoe.
So I think that those 4 different ones are 4 different tones, and I'm gonna plead ignorance here and say I know 0 about tones. I'm sorry. I don't speak Mandarin, but I do want to do my very best to give respect to the source material by pronouncing things as best to my abilities. So I have not yet figured out how to pronounce the SH sound from the X and the SH sound from the SH differently, but I'm doing my best, and as always, if there's anything wrong, you can correct me, but because I found this guide, I have been doing a much better job at pronouncing names without having to stop every time, so lucky you guys. The live stream version should be significantly less stilted than my previous ones. And hopefully, with practice, I will continue to get better, which would be awesome because the better I record it the first time, the easier the editing is later. Without further ado, Realm 1, Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 1. It was finally over. Ning Shu stood next to the hospital bed. A doctor wearing a white coat walked through her to save the girl on the bed. Ning Shu looked at the girl. Her face was pale white, and she no longer had any hair on her head. She didn't even have eyebrows anymore. She simply lay quietly on the bed. So as normal, when there's anything that's repetitive, I'll probably just edit it out. And since it's the very beginning, and I will get this out of the way now so I don't interrupt later, another reason why I am interested in this story is because of the main character. It's one of the stories with the main character being disabled, right? So this one, I'm pretty sure she died of cancer. Usually when there's a disabled character, it's that they were chronically ill and they died from it. But I'm always interested to when people choose those as the main characters and then see how the disability is addressed in the story, if at all. Because a lot of the time when authors write a chronically ill or a terminally ill character who transmigrates, that character has a lot of thoughts that so for those who do not know me, I myself am chronically ill, severely disabled, and several times during the process of getting diagnosed with the lifelong condition that is incurable that I have, there were several times when I was told that I was terminally ill and, for example, only had a very small amount of time to live. And thankfully, those diagnoses did not end up coming through. For example, they thought I had COPD, which would have given me about 4 years, or another time they thought that I had this heart condition, which would have similarly probably given me about 6 months to a year. So I obviously don't have the same experience of people who have a terminal condition, but I have had a terminal diagnosis on the table and thought that I had it for a period of time before determining that that was a false flag, right? And I am, to this day, exceptionally ill. And I've spent about 7 years primarily bedridden, which means for me, because there's different levels, 80% of my day is spent in bed. And only 20% of my day can I be off of the bed for short periods of time. So it's always interesting to me to see disabled main characters, such as Ningshu, and how the authors write them, because sometimes I'll read it and I'll think, oh, that's so relatable, and this author has really either experienced something similar or done their research. And then other times I read them and I'm like, this is horrible, and this is what healthy people think sick people act and think like, but that's not actually accurate, like most vast majority of the time. So I think with Ningshu, it doesn't really come up very often, so there was nothing horribly offensive, but in general, I always just, I don't know, I root for the disabled main characters. I'm like, yes, one of us. Alright, enough of your blabbering, Noeinan. Time to actually get to the story. Realm 1, Campus Cultivation Crisis. Chapter 1, It Was Finally Over. Ningshu stood next to the hospital bed. A doctor wearing a white coat walked through her to save the girl. Ningshu stood next to the hospital bed. A doctor wearing a white coat walked through her to save the girl laying there. Ningshu looked at the girl on the bed. Her face was pale white, and she no longer had any hair on her head. She didn't even have eyebrows anymore. She simply lay there quietly. People looked really funny without eyebrows. Ningshu never expected to be worried over eyebrows at this point in time. It seemed that death wasn't that scary or painful after all. Right now, Ningshu didn't feel any pain. That's correct. Ningshu was dead. She was standing at the side, looking down at her own body. She tried to re-enter her body. Even though it was a body that had been tormented by illness to the point that it was a mess, she still wanted to live. This light and fluttery feeling made Ningshu feel very unsettled. At this time, the door to the room opened. A married couple rushed in. Running over, they hugged Ningshu's body and cried. Following behind them were two men. These were Ningshu's older brothers. Ningshu reached out, wanting to hug her mom, but in the end her hand passed through her body. Mom, don't be so sad. Mei is finally free. She's gone to a different world. Ningshu's eldest brother supported Ningshu's mom. Mei means younger sister. It can be used both for people that are blood related to you and people who are not. Ningshu watched them like a spectator. She has been freed. She's lived in the hospital ever since she was 15. Every week she had to go through chemotherapy 2 times. That bone-penetrating pain has already accompanied her for over 10 years. From the very start, her family was already in despair and showered her with heartache. Accompanied love. However, as time passed, they visited the hospital less and less. It was to the point that they became numb to the fact that she was ill. Ningshu didn't blame them. On the contrary, she felt fortunate that she was born in such Ningshu didn't blame them. On the contrary, she felt fortunate that she was born in such a prosperous family and was able to receive treatment. She was satisfied with having lived 10 years, even if it was on a hospital bed. It was just that life contained too many regrets. A smile blossomed on Ningshu's face. She was very grateful to her family. Thank you. Ningshu's soul grew lighter and lighter. Ningshu's soul grew lighter and lighter until it... Silencing my phone. Sorry, guys. Yeah, I know. Leave it to me. Somebody's here dying, and I'm getting text messages. How insensitive. Ningshu's soul grew lighter and lighter until it finally started floating on its own to some unknown place. Suddenly, Ningshu heard a sound. A cool and emotionless voice came from within her soul. The soul meets the requirement, locking on to system space. Immediately following that, Ningshu felt something cold flow into her soul. Even though she was in this state, she could feel an ice-cold energy explode inside her. Under the attack of this power, Ningshu lost consciousness. Before she fell unconscious, her last thought was, hopefully this doesn't mean she can't reincarnate. After an unknown period of time, Ningshu finally woke up again. She felt very tired, and her soul felt heavy. Fatigue of the soul caused people to have a drained and also very panicked feeling. Ningshu rubbed her head. It was purely a reflex, but unexpectedly, when she touched her head, it felt like she was rubbing cotton. Ningshu felt both pleasantly surprised and terrified, completely confused as to what was going on. Her soul actually changed into this texture. She didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. However, at the very least, it wouldn't be easy for her soul to dissipate like this. After calming down, Ningshu started looking around. It was completely white, without a single item in sight. There was no sound, no trace of life. It was deathly still, without a thing. It was too quiet, eerily quiet. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 2, Wait for Fate. Humans have always been frightened of unknown things. Ningshu also wasn't an exception. Even if she was a soul now, she still felt her hair stand on end facing this kind of situation. However, for better or for worse, she was still alive right now, although it was a different type of living. Since she couldn't figure it out, she decided to stop thinking about it and simply accept what came. If it was said that illness brought Ningshu endless pain and suffering, it also had to be acknowledged that it gave Ningshu a tenacious mentality. Without a strong mentality, upon facing the endless pain and suffering, a person would commit suicide in order to escape the torment. Ningshu tried stomping on the thing below her feet. It felt very strange. She bent down and touched it with her hand. She had never seen this kind of thing before. Ningshu observed her surroundings and found that she was the only one here. Hence, she gave up on the thought of finding a companion and sat down on the ground. Sitting as if she was about to meditate, she closed her eyes. In truth, Ningshu loved life more than anyone else. There was definitely a reason why she was here, so she could only wait and see what exactly fate had in store for her. Ningshu didn't know if she was just imagining it, but she felt very comfortable sitting this way. That's not right. It should be said that her soul felt very comfortable. Some warm things flowed into her body, and it made Ningshu feel a bit airy. Endless waiting inevitably caused fear. Ningshu discovered a game to pass the time, and that was meditating and absorbing that unknown thing into her body. Ningshu didn't know how she was supposed to absorb these things, so she could only rely on meditating. Ningshu opened her eyes. Her eyes contained surprise and joy as she felt her own body. The reason for the joy was because she felt her body change a little. Before, her body had felt like soft cotton with a very thin texture, but now her body felt slightly more condensed. Of course, it was just a little bit, but Ningshu still felt it. What exactly was this place? It actually had the effect of strengthening souls. It was way too magical. Test results meet the requirement. Starting task. A cold mechanical voice spoke. In this deathly still space, it was abnormally abrupt and strange. Upon hearing this voice, she felt a chill, as if she had heard this voice before. She had heard it right before she fainted. Ningxu was cautious in regards to the things she didn't understand. She didn't open her mouth to demand who the person was or to ask what goal they had. What could other people possibly want for her with her like this? What could other people possibly want from her? What could other people possibly want her for with her like this? Your current number is 2333. Number 2333, do you want to start the task right now? Ningxu, for some reason, felt that she was being ridiculed with 2333, this kind of number. Then she heard that some sort of task was about to start. Although she didn't know exactly what that meant, she replied immediately, "Start the task." Ningxu had just finished speaking when a projected screen appeared in front of her. On it, her information was displayed. Number 2333. Name Ningxu. Age 27. Experience 0. 0 out of 10,000. Soul 60. Life 50. Charm ? Charm unknown. Luck 20. Mental strength 120. Abilities none. Acquired titles none. Upon seeing these stats, Ningxu had a feeling as if she was playing a game. But why were there only question marks for her charm? However, charm was not very important, so Ningxu didn't mind it and asked about other things instead. My number is 2333, so does that mean that there are people with numbers before that? Player does not have the authority to know. It was the ice-cold voice. Then what happens after the experience points reach 10,000? Player does not have the authority to know. Since I'm a player, are there other players? Player does not have the authority to know. Why are my charm points unknown? She probably had the right to know this, right? The machine voice paused for a moment before it said, "While host was alive, no man expressed a favorable opinion or love towards host. That's why host's charm cannot be determined." Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 3, Task Taker. This world contained many realms, and Ningxu's task was to enter those realms and fulfill the entrusters' requests. These entrusters would sacrifice certain things in hopes that their lives would improve. This was where the task takers rose to the occasion. When Ningxu found out that she could enter other people's bodies, she was very happy. While she worked on completing the task, she could even experience the life of a healthy person and fulfill her last lifetime's regret. However, the thing that called itself the system poured cold water on her. You only have 5 years to do the task. You only have 50 life points. 1 life point is equal to 1 year. Once you use up all your life points, you'll disappear completely. You'll completely disappear. Of course, you can choose to stay in the task world and spend your entire life there, but afterward, that will be it. Ningxu nodded to indicate that she understood. For the first task, I've selected the easiest one from within the system. It's a school campus world. Do you wish to start the task now? The system's voice was very cold, without a hint of emotion. Every time Ningxu heard the system make a sound, her entire body would feel a chill. She really didn't like its sound, so she immediately replied, "Start the task." Right after Ningxu finished speaking, she felt dizzy. She felt as if her entire body had been shoved into a narrow bottle. She couldn't move an inch, and it felt like she was about to die. Beat this damn bitch to death. Does she even look at herself to actually approach the prince? She sure has thick skin. Does she actually think she's some rich miss? Slut. When Ningshu could finally feel sensations again, she immediately heard a buzzing sound along with the sound of a lot of people shouting. Her body was being kicked. It was as if these people wanted to break her bones. What kind of situation was this? Didn't the system say that this was the easiest task? Why was she being beat up the moment she was sent over? It was supposed to be an easy task, wasn't it? Ningshu opened her eyes. All around were bright, white, big legs. From time to time, a leg would extend forward and kick her. She could even see these people's underwear when they lifted their legs. There was a stinky smell on the floor tiles, along with the distinctive smell bathrooms had. Ningshu instantly realized what she encountered. She was being beaten up in the bathroom. Right now, her mind was completely blank. She didn't have time to receive this world's storyline at all. Ningshu couldn't help but be stunned upon facing this kind of situation. Suddenly, a hand appeared in front of Ningshu and lifted her by her collar. Ningshu's body involuntarily stood up. She opened her eyes and looked at the person in front of her. The person grabbing her collar was a girl. She was wearing a school uniform and a short skirt. Her eyes were filled with disgust and disdain as she looked at Ningshu. She scratched Ningshu's face with her long nails as if she wanted to tear off Ningshu's face. She scratched Ningshu with her long nails as if she wanted to tear off Ningshu's face. Ningshu's body convulsed from pain. She had endured over 10 years of torment from illness, but this body was not used to pain, so a cry of pain involuntarily escaped. Upon seeing the pleased expression that emerged in the girl's eyes, Ningshu's heart chilled. How much hatred was there to make a youthful little lady expose this kind of expression? This wasn't simple campus violence anymore. When that girl saw the dull expression on Ningshu's face, she grabbed her by her hair and smashed her head towards the wall. Ningshu had been dizzy in the first place. Now that the person was hitting her head against the wall, her consciousness became even fuzzier. It was to the point that she felt her soul was about to pop out from this body. Ningshu panicked a little. She couldn't leave this body. If she did, what would happen to her task? There was no reason to fail the first task just like this. She could instinctively sense that if she failed like this, she may disappear. The person named Ningshu would cease to exist. With pure willpower, Ningshu endured the pain in her body. Perhaps they were bored with her since she wasn't resisting anymore, because those girls finally let her go and left. As they walked by, they stepped on her, causing Ningshu's body to jerk from pain. Suddenly a hard-to-control feeling of being wronged and hatred emerged in Ningshu's heart, causing the body she was possessing to tremble with a desire to rush up and rip those people to shreds, to let them experience this pain and humiliation. Ningshu was shocked by this body's reaction. It was quite a while before she managed to repress this feeling. She got up from the ground, went into the bathroom, and sat on the toilet, completely out of strength. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 4, Ace Academy. Right now, Ningshu's entire body hurt. These damned girls really didn't hold back. Ningshu waited until her emotions calmed down a little before proceeding to receive this world's storyline. Ace Academy was an aristocratic school. All of the people that could attend this school were from wealthy families. It was a gold-plated location for the children of the rich and powerful. There was an absolute hierarchy which was determined each semester by money. However, one day a little ugly duckling appeared in this place full of beautiful swans. Her appearance was like a stain on a beautiful painting of luxurious flowers, an existence that wrecked the painting. Hence, this ugly duckling experienced the malice of the world and was bullied terribly. Every school inevitably had a few of these existences, handsome and rich, seeming to possess all the good things in the world, a prince with a noble family background whose stomps could shake up the world's economy. Ace also had this kind of prince. It even had 3. And these 3 had unseverable emotional ties to the ugly duckling. In reality, none of this had much to do with Ning Shu. She wasn't the ugly duckling. This body's name was Lin Jia Jia. She was a sophomore in high school. Her family ran a company. The only reason she had been able to enter ACE, this type of aristocratic school, was completely due to a stroke of dog-shit luck. As for why so many people were beating her up, it was because she had offended that ugly duckling. This ugly duckling was originally a female cultivator in a cultivation world. After her body was destroyed by someone, she transmigrated into the ugly duckling's body. Due to the fact that she had cured an illustrious person's illness with spiritual energy, she was able to come to ACE. The female cultivator didn't care for this body, but she had no way to leave it. Her strength had fallen by a great amount, and she would disappear if she left this body. Thus, she used a bit of spiritual energy to change this body's essence. The original gray duckling instantly became a glamorous goddess. Facing the bullying of the students, the ugly duckling, no, it wasn't suitable to keep calling her ugly duckling anymore, Ling Xue felt that the bullying was very childish and easily resolved it all. Ling Xue had no intention of standing out in the school and continued to disguise herself with dirt, but this ended up attracting the attentions of the 3 princes. But this ended up attracting the attention of the 3 princes. The female cultivator had lived for a long time and naturally wouldn't take a fancy to those brats, but she felt no harm in using them to feel superior. This place wasn't the cruel cultivation world. After Ling Xue This place wasn't the cruel cultivation world. After Ling Xue relaxed, she was happy to let people pursue her. These chapters are actually fairly short, so I might end up doing more than 10 chapters per each video. We'll see how it goes. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 5. Transferred to the Wrong World. Cultivator? Ningshu's jaw dropped. Wasn't this supposed to be the simplest world? But there was even a cultivator present. Ningshu naturally knew what a cultivator was. In the eyes of normal people, cultivators were practically gods. Such an OP character actually appeared in a school campus world. Ningshu no longer harbored much hope towards this task. She was just an ordinary person, while the opponent was a cheat-like existence that played betting on stones, established underground societies, and stirred the world with her every move. In the school, she was pursued like a goddess. Outside of the school, she was the queen of the night. Betting on stones is something that frequently occurs in cultivation novels. It's when people bet on whether the contents of a stone would be high quality or not. In real life, it's in regards to jadeite stones. In cultivation novels, it's often regarding spirit stones. Felt like Ling Xue was going to break this world playing with it. The difference in abilities was too great. Ningshu suspected that cold system of trolling her. This was a simple task. Then she looked at the original host's wish. Kick the aloof and arrogant Ling Shui down into the mud. Make it so the person she liked, Lung Ao, no longer gets toyed around with by Ling Shui, and punish all the people that helped Ling Shui bully her. Ningshu. Ningshu truly felt that the tax. I'm not sure. Ningshu. ... Ningshu truly felt that the task she received was off. It was a very, very off. Although she was a task taker, she didn't have any special abilities. In the face of true power, everything was fleeting clouds. Strength could destroy everything. Ningshu tried calling out in her heart to see if she could contact the system. The original host's desires were seriously too hard. She couldn't help with this counterattack. Ningshu knew her own abilities. She would probably be decimated before even reaching Ling Shui. She treasured her little life, Ningshu was just trying it out. Unexpectedly, she really made contact with the system. There was a sound of electricity before the system's mechanical voice appeared. Why are you in this world? Ningshu puked blood. How would she know why she was in this world? This is a mid-level world. What did you come to this world for? You won't be able to complete a mid-level world's task. Oh, it seems like there was a mistake in the transfer process. Yes, there's been a bit of a problem with my program. For the time being, I can't transfer you back. Since you've taken possession of the entrustor's identity, you still have to continue the task. The sound of flowing electric current came again, then the system disappeared. Ningshu stood dumbfounded. So her task difficulty had increased by n levels? Ningshu suddenly recalled her luck level. Was her luck too low? Was that why this kind of situation occurred? At this rate, she'll be trolled to death. However, Ningshu was no longer afraid. Being backed into a corner caused her resolve to strengthen. She had already died once, so what else was there to be afraid of? Ningshu felt that, on the contrary, she had benefited in the fact that she had been able to possess a healthy body like this. Ningshu didn't know about other things, but enduring patiently was something she was an expert in. As for the earlier incident of violence, it was due to the fact that the original host ran to Lung Ao and said in front of Prince Lung that Ling Shui was involved with someone in a gang, that Ling Shui had a relationship with the boss of a crime syndicate. She believed herself to be waking Lung Ao up and preventing him from being tricked. But in any case, she badmouthed Ling Shui a lot. In reality, everything the original host, Lin Jia, said was true. Ling Shui was involved with someone in a gang. She had speaking power within the underground society, and her true love was the boss of a syndicate. Mature, spicy, and ruthless, not to mention skillful and godly good-looking, was the type Ling Shui liked. As for those princes that were pursuing her in school, Ling Shui only saw them as childish little brats and simply played with them a little when she got bored. Yet it just happened that those three princes liked being cheesed this way. When Ling Shui found out that the original host went and badmouthed her in front of Lung Ao, she sent someone to teach the original host a lesson. Ling Shui didn't feel like personally moving to deal with this type of insignificant character, which was what led to the bathroom incident earlier. This doesn't really matter, but the term lung ao means icily arrogant. The people that hit her earlier were people that the original host, Lin Jia, wanted revenge on as well. The road to completing the task sure was... The road to completing this heavy task sure was long. Ningshu had no idea how to go about it. Opening the door, she left the bathroom. It was currently class time, so there was no one wandering around the campus. Ningshu headed towards the nurse's office based on what she remembered. The wounds on this body had to be treated. Nothing was more important than a healthy body. Not to mention, there was nothing else she could do right now either. The school doctor was a man about 20 years old. He wore glasses that added a refined charm to his handsome face, and the large white coat managed to hang on his body in a way that gave off a hint of sexiness. In short, he was a very attractive man. Just this room full of injured female students. If it wasn't a stomach ache, then it was a sprained ankle. Some were even asking the doctor to rub their stomachs because they had cramps, was proof enough for how much the female students liked this man. Ningshu's lips twitched as she got in line. She looked at the female student in front of her and saw that hearts were pretty much leaping out of her eyes. She didn't seem to not be feeling well at all. She was probably the only one in this entire room that was actually injured. Could they let her go first? Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 6, The School Doctor. Ningshu leaned against the wall and finally managed to wait until it was her turn. The school doctor glanced at Ningshu. Seeing her bruised face, shock appeared on his handsome one. Seeing her bruises, shock appeared on his handsome face. It was obvious that he had seen too many people feign illnesses. The sudden appearance of an actual injured person was surprising and new. Ningshu pointed at the injury on her forehead and said straightforwardly, "Help me treat this." As for the injuries on her body, she'll deal with them herself. She thought that the school doctor would be a woman, yet it turned out to be such a handsome man. It was such a waste for him to be a school doctor. As expected of a place where the female lead was staying, even the school doctor was such an attractive male. Taking a cotton swab and dipping it in rubbing alcohol, the school doctor directly jabbed it towards the bruised region on Ningshu's face, without a trace of gentleness. Ningshu gritted her teeth. Even the school doctor was being so fierce towards her, despite there being no enmity between them. Was the entire school enveloped by Lingshua's influence? After all, the school doctor simply bandaged After that, the school doctor simply bandaged the wound and declared that it was done. "It's done. How did you get injured?" Her forehead was bleeding, and that swollen. Yet this was all he did to treat it. As a patient that had stayed in the hospital for over 10 years, she felt that this doctor's attitude was clearly being disrespectful towards life and irresponsible. "This is it?" Ningshu spoke up about it after all. She pointed at her forehead, which was swollen to the point it could be a horn. She was very dissatisfied with this crude treatment. Seriously, nothing was going well. The school doctor pushed up his glasses. His eyes shot out a light that gave people a very sinister and dark feeling as he asked mildly, "Then how do you want me to treat it? Wrap up your entire body?" This school doctor position of his was pretty much decoration. Which of the students in this school actually needed a school doctor? All of their families had specialized doctors, yet he suddenly encountered a student that actually needed a doctor. The school doctor looked at Ningshu with his eyebrows raised. Ningshu was tongue-tied. His confident and justified tone made it seem as if she was the one causing a fuss out of nothing. She had only transmigrated over for a few moments, yet she felt like her past worldview had been completely smashed. The little ladies in school could be so fierce. The school doctor that worked at school could be so arrogant, not even worried that the school would fire him. Ningshu didn't know what to say. She really didn't have anything that she needed to say to him either, so she got up and made to leave. Right now, her thoughts were filled with the task. Even if the task was difficult, she still had to do her best to complete it. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 7, Throwing Stones. Ningshu had no words left to say about the school doctor's arrogant and self-righteous attitude. She simply walked out with gauze wrapped around her forehead. This attracted the doctor's interest, and he kept watching her until her figure was out of sight. Ningshu returned to the classroom based on the original host's memories. In truth, she was very moved to see the classroom. She had been staying in the hospital ever since she was 15, so she never had the chance to go into a classroom after that. However, this moment of excitement was instantly extinguished. Ningshu was about to head in when the teacher wearing glasses blocked her way. "Lin Jia, you skipped class and purposefully arrived late, so you don't have to attend this class. Just stand at the door." Miss Liang spoke mildly, but her gaze revealed disdain. "Don't disrupt others in their learning." Ningshu was very unhappy, but she knew that she didn't have the power to resist, so she obediently stood at the door. Mrs. Liang gave a humph. She was the image of a mean-spirited middle-aged woman, nothing like an engineer of the human soul. Engineer of the human soul is a phrase describing teachers, as they shape the type of people children become. They're supposed to be kind and wise role models. ACE was an aristocratic school, so the status of the teachers within the school weren't even as high as that of the students. Moreover, these students could afford to offend. Currently, she was someone everyone in ACE could yell at, so Mrs. Liang naturally joined in throwing stones at the person who fell down the well. By doing this, she could curry favor with the three princes who were godlike existences within the school. Lin Jiajia's memories showed that back then, when the entire school was bullying Ling Xue, Mrs. Liang had made things difficult for Ling Xue at every turn. However, when Ling Xue reversed her circumstances, Mrs. Liang immediately changed her attitude and started currying favor with Ling Xue. This was what an opportunist was like. Ningshu stood in the hallway. She could hear the whistles and laughter coming from the classroom. Some people even stood up to look at her with disdainful and mocking gazes. Ningshu. ... What exactly did the original host do to make these people hate her so much? It was to the point it seemed as if she had murdered their fathers. Ningshu re-examined Lin Jiajia's memories. She didn't seem to have done much of anything. All she did was cause trouble for Ling Xue like crazy. Before she knew it, it seemed like everyone hated her. Ningshu was speechless. In this world, Ling Xue played the absolute leading role, and these worlds all revolved around the male lead. Ling Xue only needed to move a finger, and countless people would scramble to blindly worship her. This wasn't charm anymore, it was terrifying. How would this world end up? Ningshu felt she was being overly meddlesome. She didn't even have the outlines of a plan for completing her current task, yet her thoughts had ran off to worry about humanity in the world. Ningshu's legs hurt a bit from standing, so she stood on one leg, switching legs from time to time. The bell that announced the end of class finally rang, but before Ningshu could move, a swarm of people rushed out from the classroom and surrounded her. These were the people that had beaten up Ningshu in the restroom. An Rong was the girl who had smashed Ningshu's head against the wall. She was currently chewing gum. She lifted her chin and looked down at Ningshu. With a strange tone, she said, "You actually dared to come to class. Looks like you don't have much of a long-term memory." Ningshu's body trembled. This body was afraid of this person. In the story, this girl named An Rong acted as Ling Xue's lackey and beat the original host up so much that she was bruised all over every single day. Resentment and fear arose in her heart. It was as if it was said that Ling Xue was the person that the original host hated most, it had to be said that the original host hated An Rong no less. After all, An Rong had personally done many things to the original host. "Prince Lung is coming! Prince Lung is coming!" This chapter is dedicated to Reading Demon, who was the first commenter on this site. Reading Demon commented so early that her comment got washed out because I was fiddling with adding the Discus plugin. Sorry, and congrats on being the first commenter. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 8, Prince Lung. The sound of girls shrieking filled the surroundings. Both sides of the hall were filled with girls, but a path appeared in the middle. 3 princes that brought their own glow emanating devices walked towards Ningshu's classroom. Like stars revolving around the moon, the surroundings were filled with the shrieks of excited girls. Ningshu's gaze focused on the person that was at the very front. He was tall, with a cold expression on his face, but this coldness contained a sort of immaturity that made him seem like a rebel. He seemed noble and aloof, and at the same time haughty and cool. Ningshu could feel her heart pounding. Her face was even flushed. Ningshu indicated that this was simply the body's reaction. It had nothing to do with her. An Rong, who was originally throwing her weight around, immediately became a sweet little girl upon seeing the 3 princes. The domineering air disappeared without a trace, as if she was an entirely different person. All the surrounding girls were blushing as well. Cat, stop making noises. All the surrounding girls were blushing as well. It didn't matter what type the girls liked, whether it was aloof, passionate, or elegant. All the possible characteristics were present among the 3 princes. A bitter and resentful thought emerged in Ningshu's heart. "They're all vixens, these damned vixens." Black lines emerged on Ningshu's forehead. How much did the original host like Lung Ao? Even when offering her own soul in order to have a better life, she didn't forget to save Lung Ao from Ling Xue's charm. "Prince Lung, you're here for Ling Xue, right? Ling Xue's in the classroom. I'll help you call her," said An Rong excitedly. Then she rushed into the classroom to call Ling Xue. Forgot to mention that the original host was actually classmates with Ling Xue. What ill fate, Ling Xue already knew about the situation outside. When she thought about the fact that she, a cultivator, actually had to go outside to see these ordinary people, she felt irritated. However, she reminded herself that these little kids were capable of helping her deal with some small problems. They could allow her to live comfortably in the school. Sometimes influence was simply that convenient. Just a sentence from Prince Lang was enough. Just a sentence from Prince Lung was enough. It was easier than cake for her to make things difficult for someone. Thus, Ling Xue got over the feeling of annoyance. The princes that all the girls in school liked actually liked her. Though Ling Xue was a cultivator, she was also a woman, and she was even vainer than most women. Ling Xue smiled and walked out of the classroom. Flipping her hair back with her hand, she gave a slight smile. Everyone looking at Ling Xue at that moment felt enchanted, as if sweet-scented flowers were falling from the sky. When Ning Shu saw Ling Jue, she couldn't help but sigh in admiration. As expected, she was a remarkably beautiful woman. Her features were exquisite and noble, yet also strangely friendly, and made people want to get close to her. Even Ning Shu felt an urge to get closer to Ling Jue when she saw her, as if Ling Jue was the person she knew best. Even Ning Shu felt an urge to get closer to Ling Jue when she saw her, as if Ling Jue was the person she knew the best, the person she loved the most. Ning Shu was inwardly shocked. What was this? The main character halo was actually that powerful? Ning Shu carefully thought about it. It was probably due to the spiritual energy. Ling Jue was a cultivator who absorbed the world's spiritual energy. Spiritual energy was something that the body had to get close to in order to absorb. Human bodies instinctively crave spiritual energy, which led to this feeling of wanting to get close to Ling Jue. Ning Shu's line of thought then got to the original host. Her zealous love for Lung Ao had actually forcefully blocked the effect of the main character halo and her body's thirst for spiritual energy. Ling Jue took in these people's captivated expressions. Even the cool-tempered Lung Ao was stunned, and felt very pleased. The spiritual energy she used to transform this body wasn't sacrificed in vain. Things were very difficult for women in the cultivating world she used to live in. There were not a lot of female cultivators that had been able to climb to the top using their own strength. Most of them relied on men and became human cauldrons. However, these men were currently so captivated by her charm that they couldn't extricate themselves. This article has a very good explanation of what it is meant by using female cultivators as cauldrons. So, for those who don't feel like going to the original source and clicking the article, a brief summary is that in cultivation worlds, there's a thing called dual cultivation, which is when two people cultivate together and resonate with each other, and it makes cultivation more beneficial for both of them. Depending on the story, this could literally just be cultivating in the same room, and then, like a tuning fork, there's like a resonance and harmony between your two spiritual energies. Or it is also very common for dual cultivation to mean cultivating while having sex. So cauldrons, or spiritual cauldrons or cultivation cauldrons. So normally dual cultivating makes both people cultivate faster, right? A cauldron is when usually a more powerful person has sex with a weaker person and then forcefully plunders their cultivation while having sex with them. So the weaker person, or the cauldron, will lose their cultivation slowly over time to the point where they can even have their cultivation base broken and become immortal. Amortal, not immortal. And the stronger person will basically improve by leaps and bounds because they are stealing the other person's spiritual energy as well as all of their decades of hard work building up their cultivation. Kind of like a spiritual vampire type situation. Try not to be so mischievous, Bernie. All right. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 9, Pink Skeleton. Ling Xue looked around and saw that everyone was looking at her except for Ning Shu, who had her head lowered. She knitted her brows unhappily. This Lin Jia always caused her trouble, but she only had to complain about it a little, and An Rong would immediately bring people to deal with her. Ning Shu lowered her head, suppressing her impulse to grab Lung Ao and shake him awake. Ning Shu felt that she was too weak. She kept being influenced by the remnant feelings of this body and had to use a lot of effort in order to suppress those feelings. She knew that she couldn't allow herself to be influenced by the original host's emotions, because if she did, how would she be any different from the original host? She had to stay calm. She had to stay calm. At this time, she suddenly felt a cool gaze shoot towards her. Ning Shu lifted her head and met with Ling Xue's gaze. What kind of gaze was it? It was a cold, detached, and aloof. It was cold, detached, and aloof, as if she were looking at an ant. Ning Shu was puzzled. She was hiding at the side and wasn't causing trouble right now. Why was the main lead looking at her? Ning Shu didn't dare to confront Ling Xue right now, as the difference between their abilities was too great. It was like the rift between heaven and earth. She could only plan quietly and avoid disturbing the tiger. If she ended up provoking the tiger, she'd be chopped right up and thrown into the river for the fishies to eat. That's right, the female lead was precisely this fierce and ruthless. Lung Ao saw that Ling Xue's gaze was directed at Ning Shu, so he also looked towards Ning Shu. Ning Shu's body immediately started trembling from excitement. Ning Shu. ... It was just a glance. What? It was just a glance. What was this body being so excited for? Ning Shu wasn't the original host and wasn't affected by Lung Ao's instant kill good looks. To Ning Shu, who had already died once, this guy was just a pink skeleton. Pink skeleton is a person that's pretty on the outside, but not necessarily so on the inside. Can you guys maybe play in the other room? Troublemaking children. Lung Ao looked at Ning Shu and knitted his brows. Strong disgust surfaced in his eyes. It was clear that he had recalled who she was. He didn't have a trace of favorable opinion towards this Lin Jia, who was always trying to hang on to him. He felt that she was disgusting, and had said so casually. Then the entire school started bullying her. Who did she think she was? And she even told him to stay away from Ling Xue. She sure didn't know her place. He sensed her gaze. Eh? Why was her gaze so clear? In the past it was disgusting, filled with what she believed to be deep love. But right now there was nothing in her eyes at all. She looked at him as if she was looking at a stranger. Lung Ao sneered. She was trying the ploy of capture by letting loose to gain his attention. How childish. Lung Ao turned around to look at Ling Xue. His eyes were full of gentleness, yet he spoke like a tsundere. Hey, woman. My birthday's this weekend. You're coming to my dinner party, right? Ling Xue wasn't interested in some birthday party. Right now, she was busy with expanding her territory. Speaking of that, Ling Xue ground her teeth. She had actually encountered an obstacle. She had been relying on her cultivation. Her body had been modified by spiritual energy and was completely different from those of normal people, yet that man had actually not been at a disadvantage when fighting with her. It made Ling Xue depressed. At the same time, she felt a desire to subdue him. Lung Ao's expression was a little nervous when Ling Xue didn't speak. He also felt a little hurt, but he didn't show it. He simply lifted his chin and said, I won't let you off if you don't come. How childish, ah. Ling Jue couldn't help but think of the man that she had exchanged blows with. Cold, ruthless, hot, and most importantly, he was very capable. Moreover, his gaze scorched when he looked at her, and it also carried a bit of an ambiguous flavor. The moment Ling Jue recalled his gaze, her heart would start beating out of control. All women liked being subdued by a strong man, especially Ling Jue, who had come from the cultivating world. To her, ordinary people were just ants. However, Ling Jue saw the nervousness and hope in Lung Ao's eyes and felt that it was really enjoyable to be able to dictate people's emotions like this. Ling Jue liked this world. Although there was barely any spiritual energy, it was also very different from a cultivation world. Ling Jue felt that she was at the summit of this world, and it was a very refreshing feeling. "I'll go, and I'll prepare a gift, too," said Ling Jue calmly. There was not a trace of ripple in her emotions, no trace of being overwhelmed by favor from a superior. A smile immediately appeared on Lung Ao's face. However, he still kept his chin lifted in a tsundere manner. "At least you know some tact." Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 10. Purpose of Lung Ao's Existence. Ningxu was pretty tired of watching this whole scene. She didn't feel that Lung Ao's personality keep accidentally pronouncing his name wrong. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 10. Purpose of Lung Ao's Existence. Ningxu was pretty tired of watching this whole scene. She didn't feel that Lung Ao's tsundere personality was cute at all. She just felt that he was too self-important. The way he looked down on people and acted as if he was giving alms to the poor made people's hands itch. She felt that there was no point in being concerned about this kind of person who couldn't even differentiate good from bad. It was clearly a school campus world, yet the main female lead was too OP, so the aloof prince that all living beings bowed to became a supporting male lead, while the other two princes changed directly into side character ends. Ningxu suspected that Lung Ao's entire existence was for the sole purpose of setting off the male lead's mature charm. The moment Ningxu made the decision to not care about Lung Ao, the body she was possessing started resisting her thoughts and even started to reject her soul. She was alarmed and hastily repeated in her heart, "I'm here to save the Prince Lang. I'm here to save Prince Lung. Save Prince Lung. Save Prince Lung." The body's remnant emotions only calmed down after quite a while. Ningxu looked towards the sky, speechless. In a stroke of bad luck, she had been transferred to this world. Her tasks were practically impossible to complete, and now the remnant emotions of this body kept causing trouble. Ningxu felt an urge to face the wind and shed tears. How could she increase her luck points? How could she increase her moral integrity? Lung Ao passed by in front of Ningxu. He slanted a glance at her, then stopped. He towered over her as he looked down at her slightly twisted face. Ningxu didn't know what was going on and blinked as she looked at Lung Ao. Lung Ao looked at her eyes. They were very clear to the point that his silhouette was reflected, to the point that one could get lost in the calmness of those eyes. Immediately afterward, Lung Ao realized that his thoughts were off. She was just a love-struck fool. She had always been bothering him like a nut job, and always went on about how he was being deceived by Ling Xue. Was Ling Xue someone nobody Was Ling Shui someone a nobody like her could slander? Don't appear in front of me again. I won't ever like you. You should just give up. If you say bad things about Ling Shui again, I'll make you regret it. Lung Ao's tone was callous. Ning Shu had no doubt that he was serious. This was the part of the task that Ning Shu was most depressed about. The original host clearly had deep feelings towards Lung Ao and insisted on making him turn around and see that the shore was behind him. But Ling Shu's opinion was, "Please, could you stop kicking up trouble?" Ning Shu looked at Lung Ao's arrogant face. Wait, no, at his chin. The guy was seriously too tall. Ning Shu tilted her head back, enduring the sharp pain from her heart. Lung Ao saw that her face had abruptly lost color and turned pale. He felt no sympathy. On the contrary, he felt pleased at having helped Ling Shui vent some anger. After saying these cold-hearted things, Lung Ao left without paying even the slightest attention to the damage his words had dealt on the girl. The mocking gazes of the people around, their sneers and laughter, stabbed Ning Shu like needles. What an egotistic person. He lived completely inside his own world. Ning Shu really didn't understand why the original host liked a person like Lung Ao so much. Was it because of his looks, or because of his family background? From Ning Shu's point of view, Lung Ao was just a person that did whatever he pleased, relying on the fact that everyone liked him. What part of a person like this was cute? I'm going to take a short interlude to actually remember to post that I am doing this story. Boop, boop. There we go. All right. Yeah, so these chapters are quite a bit shorter than Side Character Transmigration chapters, so we'll see. I'm going to keep going until chapter 20 and then see how I feel at that point. There's about 60 chapters in this first arc, so if I do 20 chapters each time, that'll be 3 videos. But if I do more, it'll be less. Just gotta see how my voice is doing. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 11, Father Lin. Ningshu's heart was numb from pain. She really hated being influenced like this by these kinds of emotions. It was really annoying. Ling Shui laughed slightly, probably due to the fact that Lung Ao was trying to please her. She slanted a glance at Ning Shu as she walked past. An elegant fragrance drifted over. Ning Shu sniffed. It smelled really nice. She was really an attractive woman. Ning Shu didn't deny that Ling Shui was attractive. If she wasn't, she wouldn't have been able to captivate the male lead, so many supporting male leads, and the countless little brothers that served her. Ning Shu couldn't quite sit still with everyone constantly looking at her. When classes were finally over and she left the school, she saw a driver waiting at the school entrance. When the driver saw Ning Shu, he immediately opened the door and said, "Miss, Master is waiting for you." Master refers to the master of a household, basically the male authority figure in the household. So in this case, it would most likely be Ning Shu's father. Ning Shu's brows raised as she looked at all the private cars parked by the entrance. She was finally getting a feel for why Ace Academy was called a school for the aristocracy. She picked out the identity of Master from her memories. He was this body's father. In reality, Lin Jiajia felt very inferior. Her family had established themselves by doing retail. Her father did count as a wealthy and influential person, but in the eyes of genuine aristocratic families that had inside information, But in the eyes of genuine aristocratic families that had inside information, her family was just an unsophisticated upstart. That's why it was said that Lin Jiajia had only been able to enter Ace Academy due to dogshit luck. These people had already forgotten that Ling Zhue's family background couldn't even compare to Lin Jiajia's. All they knew was that Lin Jiajia was an existence everyone currently hated. Lin Jiajia's situation was much worse than Ling Zhue's used to be. Not everyone was an ugly duckling that could become a swan. This body's father had sent her into Ace Academy for the sake of having her make connections with these aristocrats. Ace Academy contained the younger generations of families influential in the business world and in the political sector. Gaining a connection to any random person in Ace Academy would help the business. However, Lin Jiajia actually became the enemy of the entire school. It was so complicated, Ningxu sighed. Is an onomatopoeia for a sigh. Ningxu had just stepped into the living room when she met with a pelt of slaps. There was a lot of force behind the slaps. It was clear that the person wasn't holding back at all. Fuck, enough! How many times did people need to hit her in a day? Ningxu was practically about to burst with rage. Were all the people in this world mentally ill? Were they incapable of talking with their mouths? What's with that look? Father Lin saw his daughter looking at him with a dark expression in her eyes and was stunned for a moment. Buddy, behave. What's with that look? Father Lin saw his daughter looking at him with a dark expression in her eyes and was stunned. However, immediately afterwards, he became even more angry. Pointing at Ningxu, he shouted, "The Lin family provides you with food and shelter and gave you a life other people wouldn't have the chance to enjoy their entire lifetime. Yet when we sent you to make some connections, you decided to go and offend everyone at the school? Do you know the identities of the people in this school? Do you know the identities of the people in this school?" Really getting tempted to, lock the cats up in another room, since they keep making noises. Impossible to record anything. Alright. Do you know the identities of the people in this school? What's in that head of yours, dog shit? Do you even look at how you act? You feel like you're a match for Lung Ao? The person has already told you not to appear in front of him. Your actions have already affected the company. Lin Jiajia, haven't you messed around enough? I hope the Cat Olympics stop soon. I didn't send you to Ace Academy to cause me trouble and make the company lose money. You can't even do a single thing right. Ningxu, ... Ningxu didn't have the chance to say a single word before Father Lin started going on a tirade. Ningxu moved her head a little. Her head kept buzzing. She had definitely gotten a cerebral concussion from being hit. He was truly a top-class scumbag dad, Ningxu was starting to feel sympathy for the original host. The original host's life was already this miserable, yet she still didn't forget about saving Prince Lung. Ningshu really wanted to leave this world. These people's behaviors were way too ineffable. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 12. Kicked Out. Father Lin rambled on about a lot of stuff. When his mouth got dry, he lifted a cup of tea and took a drink. He saw that Ling Shu had her head lowered silently, and he saw that Ning Shu had her head lowered silently and couldn't tell if she had been listening to him or not. Then he thought about how things hadn't been looking well for the company. It seemed like the company was about to be driven to bankruptcy by this daughter who only brought bad luck. Inspectors would come to the company every day. For a while, it would be about taxes, then about formalities. In any case, they kept coming for all sorts of reasons, and Father Lin was practically about to be driven crazy. Lifting the teacup, he threw it towards Ning Shu. After being hit for no reason earlier, Ning Shu had kept an eye on Father Lin's movements. The moment she saw him move, she dodged. The teacup instantly hit the floor and shattered. Father Lin pointed at Ning Shu with one hand while covering his chest with his other hand. He looked as if he was about to have a heart attack. In the end, he revealed a helpless and pained expression, as if he was suffering but couldn't do anything about it. If I shove you into the blanket, will you calm the fuck down? Okay. Ning Shu, what was going on now? Jia, you should leave the Lin family. This is just a temporary measure. After some time and these events pass, Father will bring you back into the family. Jia, Father loves you, but Father really doesn't have any other way. Jia, don't blame Father, all right? Ning Shu stammered. Father, what do you mean? A bad feeling was emerging in Ning Shu's heart. She hoped it wasn't what she was thinking. Her moral integrity wasn't that bad, right? Wasn't 20 points of luck a little too low? In gaming, if you encounter bad RNG, or bad luck, people would joke that your moral integrity is lacking or poor because good people have good karma. From now on, you aren't the Lin family's daughter anymore. Father Lin looked at Ning Shu with a pained expression. Don't worry, Father will welcome you back. If it weren't for the slaps earlier, Ning Shu would have believed this man. Right now, what he was doing was sweeping her out the door and breaking all ties. Ning Shu felt that she had complicated things. She was clearly here to counterattack for the original host, yet she had ended up being chased out of the family. Was she a little too weak? Ning Shu said without hesitation, Father, I believe you. Rather than believe you, it would be better to believe that a female pig could climb a tree. Father Lin loosened a breath in relief when he saw that Ning Shu didn't cause a big fuss. He felt that she was still a rather clever and lovable daughter. She was just a bit dumb. Who in Ace Academy didn't have a high status? Any random student was a person with great influence and hidden power, yet she actually went and disturbed Lung Ao. Did she know who Lung Ao was? It wasn't wrong to have ambition, but if you tried to reach for things that were set too high, you'll fall to your death. Father Lin had ambition as well, but he still went step by step. However, due to this daughter, his company now struggled to make progress. If things kept going on like this, he really would end up bankrupt. Try to make trouble now. Ning Shu went to Lin Jiajia's room to pack. She packed all the clothes in the original host's closet, regardless of what season it was for, not leaving a single garment behind. Ningshu did not... Oh, you're so cute. Come here, baby. Do not claw. Okay. Ningshu didn't believe a single word that old fox said. As for what he promised about welcoming her back to the family, Ningshu just treated it as a fart. Ningshu, who had stayed in the hospital for so many years, understood things like this too well. She had seen too many people act for the sake of their own benefit. Key moments in human lifetimes, their birth, their process of getting old, when they got sick, and when they died, occurred in the hospital. Although Ningshu had never stepped into society, she had seen all the attitudes of the world in the hospital. For the sake of benefit, the Lin family had abandoned their daughter. Ningshu felt bad for the original host. Gauze was wrapped around her head in such an obvious manner, yet Father Lin, despite all he said about how Father loves you, didn't even notice this big wound. He even added injury to injury and kicked her out without asking a thing. Ningshu swept all the cosmetics and jewelry boxes on the dressing table into the suitcase, then packed all the name brand bags as well. She could exchange them for a bit of cash if things ever got difficult. Ow, 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 ow. Oh, I see you're taking revenge. Please sit quietly and stop clawing me, little rat. Campus Cultivation Crisis Chapter 13. Hidden Task Triggered. Ningshu finished packing, ending up with 2 large suitcases. Pulling the suitcases, she opened the door and encountered a woman leading a boy that looked about 7 years old. Ningshu checked her memories. They were the original host's mother and younger brother. This little brother was younger than the original host by almost 10 years and was the precious jewel of the entire family. Even the original host, Lin Jia, had always given this younger brother everything he wanted and loved him dearly. This was due to the fact that her parents would often tell her that siblings must love each other, and that even after she got married, she would still have to rely on her family's influence. Though it stemmed partially from selfish motives, and also from the fact that they were related by blood, Lin Jia truly did treat this younger brother sincerely well. However, Ningshu was just a stranger. As a spectator, she saw that this family only treated this little kid well. Towards their daughter, they viewed her as a commodity that costed money and only treated her as a tool. When she was being kicked out, the original host's mother had stayed inside her room. She not only did not come out and stop the father from kicking their daughter out. Even now, she didn't bother to urge Ningshu to stay. Mother Lin took out a thick envelope and said, "This is the money Mother prepared for you. In the future, you'll have to live on your own and fend for yourself. This money will probably be enough for you to use for a while." Ningshu silently took the envelope and watched as the mother and son pair went into their room. She felt very unsatisfied. They didn't even bother to fake some tears as a gesture. It couldn't be that the original host wasn't of the Lin family and wasn't this couple's biological daughter, right? Ding! Hidden storyline has been triggered. The riddle of the original host's identity. Storyline. The little tadpole seeking her mother. Do you want to accept? The cold mechanical voice abruptly appeared in Ningshu's head, and the task was actually to help find the original host's biological parents. The original task was already difficult enough. What the hell was popping up now? Do you accept the task of discovering true identity? No. Ningshu rejected it without even considering. Things were already very messy, and now the system wanted her to find the original host's biological parents. She only had 5 years to complete her task. The longer she stayed in this world, the more of the life points would be used up. If all the points ended up being used up, she'd really vanish like smoke in the air. The sea of people in this world was boundless. How could it possibly be easy to find a person? Are you certain that you wish to accept the task of discovering true identity? Yes. Task storyline, the little tadpole seeking its mother, start. What? Shrieked Ningshu. When did she agree to start the task? She didn't even accept the task. The system was too dirty to force people like this. How could it force people to buy things like this? As a pitiful child that only had 20 points of luck, even the system became mean and was bullying her. With a dejected expression, Ningshu shoved the envelope into the suitcase and went downstairs, carrying the two large suitcases. Downstairs, Father Lin saw Ningshu's dejected, blank, and helpless expression, and made a face full of affection as he said, "This is just a temporary measure. Father will definitely welcome you back soon." Ningshu didn't feel anything seeing his phony act. The original host wasn't his daughter, but he had raised the original host and allowed her to live a well-off life. Although it was with the motive of using her, Ningshu couldn't really feel hatred towards him. This body as well. When it realized that it wasn't the biological daughter, it had actually relaxed. Guys. When it realized that it wasn't the biological daughter, it had actually relaxed. The people who get used to having their own value. The people who get used have their own value. Inevitably, something had to be sacrificed in order to live a wealthy life, spend money like water, and enjoy the things that others wouldn't ever have the chance to in their entire lives. Though this body harbors some complaints, it didn't feel hatred. Ningshu sighed in relief. Luckily, no strange task like getting revenge on Father Lin and Mother Lin showed up. She didn't feel like faking affection with Father Lin, so she lifted the suitcases and walked out the door. She called a rental car, then found a hotel to spend the night in. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 14. You're just an orphan. The next day, Ningshu rented an apartment near the school. The apartment was very small, but it was enough for her to live in. She moved her things into the apartment, then carefully cleaned all the nooks and corners. Ningshu was only satisfied when the house was practically sparkling. She stood with her hands on her waist, sweaty all over. Sweating like this felt really good. Last lifetime, her illness had ruined her body so much that she couldn't even walk around and could only lie in bed every day. She couldn't even compare to a disabled person. Ningshu bounced around a little. What a healthy body. Having found a place to stay, she headed to school the next day. All the task objectives were at Ace Academy. If she didn't go to school, how would she complete the tasks? However, the moment Ningshu walked into the school, she discovered that everyone was looking at her weirdly and kept pointing at her. When she approached them, the students would scramble away as if she carried the plague. Some people were actually exaggeratedly covering their noses. Ningshu lifted her hand and sniffed. There didn't seem to be any smell on her, When Ningshu walked into the classroom, The entire class immediately burst out laughing at her, causing Ningxu to be completely baffled. Anrong walked to Ningxu and towered over her. Her expression full of disdain, she said, Lin Jiajia, you actually still dare to come to Lin Jiajia, you actually still dare to come to class? Your skin must be made of iron. As Anrong spoke, she reached out to tug Ningxu's face. As Anrong spoke, she reached out to tug Ningxu's face. Ningxu dodged and said coldly, Keep your hands to yourself. This girl didn't have any education at all. Fortunately, etiquette was a required course for all Ace Academy students. Fortunately, etiquette was a required course for all Ace Academy students. Anrong didn't expect that this wretch, who she had always been able to hit as she pleased, would actually dare to dodge. Her face twitched, and she swung the newspaper in her hand towards Ningxu. Ningxu dodged. Ningxu dodged, then picked up the newspaper from the floor to read it. Printed as earth-shattering news on the newspaper was the information Father Lin had announced. He had severed all relationships with his daughter. Lin Jiajia was no longer the Lin family daughter and had nothing to do with the Lin family. In brief, it was as final as humanly possible. You're now just an orphan, yet you still have the face to come to school? Ace Academy isn't a welfare agency, sneered Anrong. The class burst out laughing again. As Ningxu listened to her ear-piercing laughter, she felt as if her worldview was about to shatter. She had read that junior high schoolers were confused about emotions, but the emotions in high school were the most pure. In high school, no thoughts of benefits were mixed into relationships, and it was completely different from the careful relationships in college, in which people had to take into consideration which connections were useful. However, right now, she was seeing a group of high school students using venomous words and malicious actions towards a weaker person. Ningxu had forgotten that Ace Academy was a mini-society and was even crueler than society. All the students here were people that stood at the very top of the pyramid, people that the ordinary masses could never hope to reach. Ningxu's greatest mistake was that she was weak. As an abandoned chess piece that had even been discarded by family, she truly didn't have the qualifications to stand among them. Ningxu folded up the newspaper and placed it in her bag. Then, ignoring all the disdaining gazes, she sat down at her seat. When Anrong saw that Ningxu didn't react, she felt like she had punched cotton and felt very dissatisfied. She glared at Ningxu, sending the message, Just you wait. Speaking of which, it really was an ill-fated relationship. The original host's seat was actually right behind Ling Xue's. However, Ningxu looked at her desk. It was full of crisscrossing scars and beyond recognition, the result of someone using a knife to slash at it. The desk was even missing a leg. These little devils. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 15. If She Could Cultivate. Ningxu held onto the desk with one hand to prevent it from falling. Her eyes were mosquito coils as she watched the blue-eyed blonde teacher give the lesson. Mosquito coils basically meaning the confused emoticon, where their eyes swirl around and they don't know what's going on. From start to finish, the entire course was in English. Ningxu couldn't understand a word of it. As someone that had been in the hospital since middle school, she expressed that she only knew a few simple words. Ningxu looked around and found that she was the only one that looked lost. She then shifted her line of sight to the main lead Sama's back. It was just her back, yet it still seemed so peerlessly magnificent. Using the Japanese suffix sama to indicate the similar Chinese honorific that shows respect to a superior or powerful person. Translator doesn't say, but I'm assuming it's Darun or Darun, because E is pronounced So, Darun. Okay. Ling Xue's keen senses told her that someone was watching her. She turned around and met Ningxu's gaze. Ningxu was alarmed, but since she had already been caught, she decided to just keep staring confidently. Ling Xue was irked by the way Ningxu dared to look straight at her. She felt as if she was being provoked by an ant. In the cultivation world, cultivators could start fighting due to a single glance. Ling Xue currently felt offended by Ningxu. Her gaze chilled as she recalled how this woman, Lin Jia, had gone around talking about her and bad-mouthing her. She had even tried to make Lung Ao stay away from her. Ling Xue smiled coldly. It had always been the case that she would throw things away, never the other way around. Ever since coming to this world, Ling Xue had become even more arrogant. Even when she was simply sitting in the classroom, she emitted an unyielding aura. Perhaps other people took this to be strong self-confidence. That was why Ling Xue had been able to push all the ladies with impressive family backgrounds out of the way to become the unshakable goddess of the school. Ningxu was angered by Ling Xue's gaze that seemed as if she was looking at an ant. However, she simply lowered her head and avoided that murderous gaze. Right now, she couldn't afford to get into a direct confrontation with Ling Xue. Ningxu thought about the task. She had to make the aloof Ling Xue fall down into the dirt. Didn't that mean she had to start with changing the student's impression of Ling Xue? That she had to make the goddess, who everyone pursued, become spurned like her and become someone everyone hated? That was easier said than done, though. Ningxu had no idea where to start. As of now, the female lead has probably encountered the male lead and was going through the mutual love and murder stage. A while later, the people of talent appreciate one another development will occur. At that time, Ling Xue's influence would have increased even more, and the task would become even more difficult. Ningxu massaged her head. This task was pretty much like striking a stone with an egg. It seemed impossible no matter how she looked at it. If she was capable of cultivating as well, then she could just beat the crap out of her. It'd be direct and efficient. This would directly destroy the thing that Ling Xue was relying on. What Ling Xue was relying on was the fact that no one else in this world could cultivate. Cultivation. That's right. She could ask the system if she could get a cultivation item. There wasn't a lot of spiritual energy in this world, so it was likely that Ling Xue wasn't very strong. If she could cultivate, maybe she'd have a chance. System, can I get a cultivation manual? Ningxu called out to the system in her heart. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 16. Dangerous Existence. After a while, the sound of flowing electric current appeared and caused her head to feel numb. It can be exchanged with points, but host currently does not have any points, so host cannot trade for a manual. A bucket of cold water was poured on Ningshu's head. As expected, there was nothing in this world that was free. However, she refused to give up and said, "I only ended up in this world due to your mistake. The difficulty of the task is so high. Shouldn't you give compensation?" The system replied monotonously, "The reason why host ended up in this world was due to a problem with the system program, not due to me." Ningshu vomited blood. The system was just a system, yet she had Ningshu vomited blood. Hi, honey.
Hello.
I'm in the middle of a stream. Once I'm done, we can play Craftopia.
That's fine.
I'm near the end. I'm only gonna go to chapter 20 probably.
Yeah, no worries. Sit down. I love you.
Love you. These cats have been causing trouble and interrupting my reading all day.
I'll give them food.
It's gonna be really loud for a moment while he feeds them. They're gonna scream and stampede. Okay. I'll hop on Discord once I'm done.
Huh?
I'll hop on Discord once I'm done.
Yeah.
Can you get me a remote control that I can use for...
TV?
No, Craftopia.
Oh, sure.
I kept a controller next to me, but it got moved, and now I have no idea where it is. Thank you. Okay. Sorry for the delay. Anyone who may be watching. Ningshu vomited blood. The system was just a system, yet she had actually tried to haggle with it. Her brain must have shorted out. The only visible path had... Thanks. The only... More noises. That's okay. Can I see? Okay. It's been about 2 hours. That's not bad. Sorry for the delay, viewer. I am waiting for the noises to stop before I keep up. Because otherwise I'll just have to re-record over it later. Because all of the noise will be there and then I'll have to do more editing, which I hate. Thanks, darling. Just put it away. Thanks. Alright.
Alright, I'm done.
You done? You're still gonna be like walking around and touching things though, so I can't really start until you.
Well,
Not that I'm rushing you,
you know,
just letting you know.
well, I am Russian.
Yes, you are Russian. Good job. Okay. The only visible path had just been crossed off. Ningxu couldn't help but feel a little depressed. On the other hand, Ling Jue, who was sitting in front of Ningxu, became flustered the instant the system appeared. She felt as if something powerful had set its sights on her. Ling Jue panicked. How could this world have such a dangerous existence? It wasn't possible. Ling Jue shuddered uncontrollably, cold sweat running down her back. Cultivators had very keen senses. Moreover, Ling Jue had especially good luck in this world, and all misfortunes had always seemed to become blessings. Everything had been smooth sailing for her ever since she came into this world. She hadn't encountered a single existence that caused her hair to stand up on end until now. What exactly was it? What the hell was it? Ling Jue gritted her teeth and looked around but didn't see anything abnormal. Ling Jue gritted her teeth and looked around but didn't see anything abnormal. It seemed to just be her misperception. However, this feeling was undeniably real. Ling Jue felt like she was about to be driven crazy. The instant the system left, Ningxu and Ling Jue plopped down over their desks, feeling weak. For Ningxu, it was because she had received a psychological blow. Meanwhile, Ling Jue had simply been too nervous coming into contact with such a threat. Now that it was gone, her whole body relaxed, but her face was still pale. A shadow now existed in Ling Jue's heart. Her limbs were completely out of strength. To put it frankly, she had been scared stiff. Of course, Ningxu had no idea that her little conversation with the system had scared Ling Jue so much. She was currently worrying about her tasks again. The bell signaling the end of class rang. The moment the blue-eyed blonde teacher left the classroom, Anrong ran over and kicked Ningxu's desk, and the desk just happened to hit Ling Jue, who was sitting in front. It smashed right into Ling Jue's back. Ningxu's eyes widened. This had nothing to do with her. As for Anrong, her face immediately paled. Ling Jue abruptly stood up and slapped her own desk. The desk instantly became trash. Ling Jue said coldly, "Do you want to die?" The intensely oppressive aura she emitted caused Anrong to fall to the ground. Ningxu had cleverly dropped to the ground immediately after the incident, so the oppressive aura didn't cause her any harm. Under the force of Ling Jue's murderous, oppressive aura, Anrong's body trembled uncontrollably. Her nose started bleeding and her teeth chattered. Then her eyes rolled back and she fainted. This occurrence immediately caused an uproar in the classroom. Only then did Ling Jue return to her senses and hastily retrieve her oppressive aura. She was very vexed. The incomparable feeling of danger earlier had caused her to become very agitated. Then, in a moment of inattentiveness, something had hit her back, and her anger immediately exploded. Cultivators tended to pay particular attention to following their hearts, and repressing her anger wasn't her style. Nothing in this world had been significant enough to anger her. That was why she had always kept an aloof attitude as she looked down on these ordinary people. However, the sensation earlier caused an uncontrollable emotion to emerge in her heart. When Ling Jue saw the alarmed expressions of the people in the classroom as they looked at her, she became even more vexed. She pressed her lips together and put on an expression of aloof indifference. She didn't intend to explain at all, nor did she bother to show concern for the unconscious Anrong. She swept a glance towards Ning Shu, who was laying on the floor without a trace of dignity. Then murderous intent flashed in her eyes. Ning Shu was bewildered. It wasn't like she had kicked the table. Why was Ling Shui looking at her with such a menacing gaze? The female lead sure was willful, always deciding on things however she liked. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 17. Attract bullets even when laying in a trench. Ning Shu felt schadenfreude when she saw An Rong like this. It was the original host's feelings, but it was Ning Shu's feelings as well. She had been beaten up by An Rong right after she transmigrated to this world. She could endure the pain, but having her hair grabbed and her head rammed against the wall was painful and humiliating. Lung Ao immediately had someone send over a brand new desk when he found out that Ling Shui's desk broke. Ning Shu silently set her three-legged desk upright as she watched Lung Ao question Ling Shui in concern. He looked worried, but still acted like a tsundere. His self-important manner caused Ning Shu's lips to twitch. As of now, Ling Shui had calmed down and returned to her usual cool and elegant manner. She smiled slightly as she said to Lung Ao, "It's fine now." A smile immediately appeared on Lung Ao's face. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Ning Shu sitting there, holding up her desk with one hand, looking indescribably wretched. He spoke with a tone of disgust. Was it you that injured Ling Shui?" Ning Shu blinked without saying anything. Why was she being dragged into this? "Hey, I'm talking to you." Lung Ao lifted his leg and overturned Ling Shu's desk with one kick. Of course, the desk didn't ram into Ling Shui this time. Ning Shu watched as her desk fell to the ground with a creak. The desk was innocent. Why were they all venting their anger out on the poor desk? Ning Shu felt that these people were all very mentally ill. Every single one of them lived inside their own world and saw things however they wanted to. Everyone in the class had seen what happened earlier, yet not a single person stepped out to speak for Ning Shu when Lung Ao put the blame on her. Ning Shu's heart chilled as a sensation of loneliness washed over her. How exactly had the original host been able to endure being ignored and trampled on like this by others? Ning Shu recalled the original host's ending in the story. When the female lead got seriously annoyed with Lin Jia, this little clown, the male lead had sent his subordinate to deal with this ignorant woman. The male lead's subordinate was also a pervert. As if playing a game, he tied the original host up into a Zongzi. Am I using Z right? Sorry for the brief interlude. I need to know if I'm pronouncing Z right. Okay, it's quicker to say J, Q, K, R. There we go. This is what I was looking for. Z. Z. Okay. Thanks for hanging in there with me. As if playing a game, he tied the original host into a Zongji shape, and then moved far away to throw an axe to see where it would hit. In the end, the axe cut into the original host's shoulder, barely an inch from her neck. The axe ended up firmly embedded into the original host's collarbone area and couldn't be pulled out. Zongji is a traditional Chinese food made of glutinous rice, stuffed with different fillings and wrapped in bamboo, reed, or other large flat leaves. I'm just imagining bondage, tying. So the pervert kicked her into the sea for the fish to snack on. The way the original host died was truly appalling. Ningshu looked at Lung Ao, and the way he looked down at everything with such an aloof manner, as if he was a god. She really just wanted to punch him in the face. Why exactly had the original host been so obsessed with this kind of person to the point that she couldn't even forget about him even after death? Ningshu really didn't get what part of this person was charming. He was just a sack of skin. This indicated that she had stayed in the hospital too long. Ningshu, whose sense of aesthetic had diverged from that of ordinary people, expressed that she didn't understand. Ling Shui reached out and tugged at Lung Ao's arm, as she said, "It has nothing to do with this classmate." Lung Ao looked at the beautiful, slender fingers on his arm. Each finger was like a polished, first-rate piece of sheep-fat white jade, enchantingly beautiful and carrying a slight glow. Lung Ao's heart melted the moment the beautiful woman placed her hand on his arm. Lung Ao was so happy he wanted to leap for joy, yet on the surface he simply lifted his chin arrogantly and said to Ningshu, "Since Ling Shui has spoken up for you, I'll let you off this time." "Since Ling Shui has spoken up for you, I'll let you off this time. Remember, you better stay away from Ling Shui from now on. Don't appear in front of her again, or I'll make you regret it." All sorts of mud-grass horses ran through Ningshu's heart. From the start, this had nothing to do with her, so Lung Ao's current magnanimous attitude seriously felt disgusting. She really did attract bullets, even when lying down in a trench. The characters for grass mud horse in Chinese are homophones for fuck your mom. It's basically just motherfucker. These people were all mentally ill. Weren't they mentally ill? Weren't they? If you're ill, you should go to the hospital. Don't give up on treatment. However, what surprised Ningshu was the fact that Ling Shui had actually spoken up for her. This didn't make Ningshu relax at all. She hadn't forgotten the murderous intent in Ling Shui's glare earlier. "That's right. Isn't your birthday almost here?" Ling Shui looked at Ningshu as she said, "We're all classmates, so you should invite Lin Jiajia as well." Lung Ao originally wanted to say that if this kind of person was fit to come to his birthday party, but since Ling Shui had spoken, he naturally had to give her face. "You'll be coming to my birthday party, right?" said Lung Ao. Then he continued, "In the future, you should stop making so many malicious schemes. Not every single person is as kind-hearted as Ling Shui and willing to generously forgive you for your wrongs." Ningshu: "Everyone in the world could be described as kind-hearted, but Ling Shui really couldn't count as kind-hearted. Could a person who paid no regard to the law and had no moral bottom line really be called kind-hearted?" Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 18, Obtained the Heart of the Beauty. After a full detour, the storyline still returned to its original development. In the story, it had been Lung Ao who invited the original host. The original host, Lin Jiajia, had been so happy to get Prince Lung's personal invitation that she practically went a little insane. However, after that, even more girls started bullying her. The original host had silently endured all of this. She stayed up late every night to hand-knit a scarf for Lung Ao. It was an ordinary scarf, but she believed that the meaning in something she had personally made was different. In the end, of course, she was ridiculed. Lung Ao went so far as to wrap the scarf around his golden retriever in front of the original host and remark, "Even the dog finds this kind of thing distasteful." The original host couldn't understand. He was clearly the one who invited her to He was clearly the one who invited her to this party. Why was he treating her this way? Ever since that incident, Lin Jia was laughed at whenever she went to school. Laughed at wherever she went in the school. From the looks of it now, Ling Jue had probably instigated the entire event. She was probably the reason the original host had been able to attend the party. Every time Lung Ao saw Ningshu's dazed appearance, he would feel vexed. In the past, she always tailed him every day like a pervert, but though she wasn't tailing him anymore, now she always looked at him with disdain. Disdain! What right did this woman have to look down on him? She was nothing but an abandoned orphan. No need to bring a present, just come to the party, said Lung Ao disdainfully. It's not like you can afford anything expensive anyways. There was no way Ningshu was going to buy a present. Right now, she needed to save every possible penny. Why would she buy a present for him? She was still considering whether to go to the party or not. So why did she have to save this damned prince? This task really made her feel nauseous. Who cared if a person like this died or not? The original host insisted on pulling him out from the influence of the female lead halo and changing him back to a normal person. Ningshu expressed that she couldn't do it. After this farce, she, for some reason, became a laughingstock. Ningshu's balls hurt. She hadn't done anything. She was just standing there, yet the female lead and male supporting lead insisted on coming around and mocking her. Lung Ao spoke to Ling Xue in a tsundere manner. If anything happens, come look for me. From now on, you're my woman. Lung Ao's ears were a bit red when he said this. His eyes were filled with anticipation. This sentence was equivalent to a confession. I'll look for you if there's anything. Ling Xue's attitude was ambiguous. It seemed like she had agreed, but it also seemed like she hadn't. However, a smile immediately bloomed on Lung Ao's face when he heard this. At the same time, he insisted on acting like it didn't matter much to him, so his face was as distorted as humanly possible. As Ningshu took in Ling Xue's attitude, she felt that it was no wonder the original host insisted on saving this idiot prince. The person clearly hadn't agreed to anything, yet he was acting like he had just obtained the heart of a beauty. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 19, Threat. Although everyone looked down on Ningshu and felt that she didn't have the right to be in Ace Academy, Ningshu thickened the skin on her face and insisted on staying in Ace. Ningshu was determined to take root in this school until the school sent down the documents telling her to scram. How was she supposed to save that idiot prince if she left the school? Not to mention, the female lead was currently an Ace student, so she would at least restrain herself a little within the school. Outside of the school gates, the female lead would return to the absolutely unbridled behavior of a cultivator. The nickname Queen of the Night wasn't just for show. Ningshu felt a headache. She had no idea how to carry out her tasks. Her confidence was already completely destroyed from facing such a difficult first task. Ningshu recalled Ling Xue's murderous gaze, and after deliberating a while, signed up for a taekwondo course in the hopes of strengthening this body. Although it wouldn't be much use, having greater agility would definitely help in fleeing for her life. It was seriously sad. She felt like a mouse that Ling Xue had cornered, going through her deathbed struggle. Ningshu guessed that Ling Xue was probably toying with her, and the original host. Ningshu guessed that Ling Xue was probably toying with her and the original host like a mouse in her palm. Ling Xue used the original host to improve her own reputation, so the original host ended up becoming like a trash can. Bucket after bucket of shit was thrown on her until her reputation became unbearably foul. The Taekwondo course wasn't as easy as Ningxu thought it would be. The cool movements she saw on TV were extremely difficult to practice. When she was doing the splits, the instructor even pressed a brick on her head. It was extremely painful. Luckily, the original host had a foundation in dance, so her body was still pretty flexible. Every day after school, Ningxu would go to the Taekwondo class and use all her free time to practice. Every day, she would drag her exhausted body to class. Ningxu couldn't understand what the teachers talked about. Ace Academy was different from normal schools. Their courses were on things like economics, etiquette, and how to interact with others. The students produced by this school were the absolute elites of society. Of course, these students had illustrious family backgrounds from the start, and were already suitable to become people standing at the top of the societal pyramid. Since Ningxu couldn't understand the courses, she gave up on listening and spent most of her time mulling over Taekwondo. Though these academic courses were beneficial, her life was currently in danger, so she gave up paying attention to these trifling matters. As for Ling Xue, she had clearly realized that Lin Jiajia, who was sitting behind her, was now different. However, she couldn't quite tell what part of her was different. She turned around and narrowed her eyes as she said, "Let's go to Lung Ao's birthday party together." What? Ningxu looked at Lin Xue in shock. She seriously couldn't tell what the female lead was thinking to actually suggest going to the party together. This was something that hadn't occurred in the original storyline. After all, how could Ling Xue, aloof as she was, possibly lower herself to walk beside an ant-like existence like Lin Jiajia? Ningxu had a bad premonition. The female lead couldn't be targeting her now, right? Ling Xue was indeed starting to target Ningxu. Her keen senses told her that in the past, Lin Jiajia was filled with malicious intent towards her. However, since Lin Jiajia was weak and powerless, Ling Xue had simply messed with her occasionally when she got bored. However, now this ant seemed to have become more low-key, and her resentment wasn't as obvious anymore. This irked Ling Xue and also caused her to suspect that the current Lin Jiajia might not be the original. Since she had been able to get the chance at rebirth, it was possible for other cultivators to transmigrate to this world and take up residence as well. Ling Xue had already experienced the sweet taste of being the unrivaled peak existence in the world. She absolutely refused to allow another cultivator to appear in this world and snatch her limelight. However, she didn't sense any spiritual energy in Lin Jiajia's body, and she didn't act like a cultivator either. Ling Xue decided to try probing Lin Jiajia. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 20. I'm just too nice. Ningxu watched as Ling Xue's gaze flickered. From time to time, she would emit an intense, murderous aura, then an aloof aura. Ningxu didn't know what Ling Xue was thinking about that was causing so many aura changes. She shrank back a little and said, "I can't afford a present, so I don't want to go." Ningxu was telling the truth. The presents that Lung Ao, this type of person who had countless eyes upon him, received during his birthdays were so expensive that most people couldn't afford one even if their entire life's earnings was totaled up. A trace of contempt flashed through Ling Shui's eyes as she said, "Didn't Lung Ao say that you didn't need to buy a present?" Settle down there, buddy. Stop crawling on things. God damn it. A quick thought flew through Ningshu's brain. When a person was particularly attentive for no reason, if that person wasn't a traitor, then he was a thief. The aloof female lead Sama actually wanted to hang out with her. This was way too fishy. Under the attack of Ling Shui's strong pressure, Ningshu discovered that she had no leeway to make a choice at all. She was just about to agree, but abruptly switched to saying, "Why do I have to go with you? If I'm going by myself." You're very cute, kitty, but your purring is very loud, so please. Her tone was filled with disgust. Ningshu was imitating the way the original host treated Ling Shui. She had been about to agree earlier, but based on how much the original host detested Ling Shui, there was no way she would go to the party together with her. This meant that Ling Shui had been probing her. She was suspicious of her. Ningshu felt a chill in her heart. How could cultivators be in such defiance of the natural order to be capable of sensing even a change in souls? The female lead's golden finger was seriously too big. Ningshu expressed that she felt a lot of pressure. Ling Shui saw Ningshu's disgusted expression and searched her face with narrow eyes. The stare stabbed Ningshu like needles. Her face involuntarily contorted. Ningshu glared at Ling Shui and yelled, "What are you looking at?" Before Ling Shui could say anything, her desk mate spoke first. Ling Shui has allowed you to participate in Prince Lung's birthday party out of the goodness of her heart. If it weren't for her, you wouldn't have been able to go at all. You can't even recognize others' good intentions. Ningshu looked at the girl that spoke up for Ling Shui and said directly, What the fart does it have to do with you? I'm talking to Ling Shui. What are you poking your beak in for? What benefits has Ling Shui given to you to make you kneel like this and lick her toes? The person herself hasn't even said anything. What are you barking for? It was seriously refreshing. In any case, these people didn't like her, so why not just shed all pretense of cordiality? Acting completely without fear was much more refreshing. When the student heard the vulgar things that came out of Ningshu's mouth, she was so angry her face flushed. She shouted, "You wretch! You're the wretch! You're the most wretched! You're a wretch! When had Ling Shui's deskmate ever seen someone cursing like a fishwife like this? In their social class, even if a person hated someone to death, they would still act amiably on the surface before sticking the knife in the person's back. In Ningshu's past lifetime, she had seen quite a lot of people cause trouble in the hospital. Making an unreasonable scene like this was the most effective way to overpower people. When a scholar encountered a soldier, even if his position was logical, he wouldn't be able to convey it clearly. As expected, that female student was infuriated and itched to rip off Ning Shu's jabbering mouth. Ling Shui pulled her deskmate to a stop and swept a cool gaze at Ning Shu. Enough already. Ning Shu's heart skipped a beat upon sensing that murderous, intent-filled gaze. She pouted in a reluctant manner and shot Ling Shui's deskmate a glare. "What need is there to mind an ignoramus? It's lowering your own dignity," said Ling Shui to her deskmate. That girl also shot an arrogant look at Ning Shu. That girl also shot an arrogant look at Ning Shu, as if Ning Shu was some lowly thing. Ning Shu's lips twitched. That girl had clearly ended up as a shield for Ling Shui, so that Ling Shui could continue acting cool and elegant. Ning Shu really didn't understand what that girl was so proud about. What an idiot. She would like to ask if the female lead would ever trade insults with someone without regard for her image. It appeared that she had also successfully confirmed the female lead's impression of her. However, that didn't matter. What mattered was that it was refreshing to curse at people, All right. So I did promise to play Craftopia with my husband, but I hear him in the other room. I think he's playing with some of his other friends, which means I'm going to play with him after another 10 chapters, and I don't think he'll notice. So lucky for our current viewer, we get another 10 chapters today. These chapters are short, so it's really not too much trouble. All right. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 21. Effects of Taekwondo Practice. Ning Shu's yelling attracted the entire class's attention. Everyone looked at her as if she was a lunatic. From their perspective, Ning Shu was currently rootless. Ning Shu was currently a rootless, unstable duckweed. She was just an orphan with no support, yet she still dared to be so unbridled. By all rights, she should be shrinking into a corner like a mouse and fleeing desperately at the sight of people. However, she was actually baring her fangs and brandishing her claws. She seriously didn't know her place. Right now, Ning Shu didn't care what people thought of her. Even if she was weak, she couldn't show it. Acting weak would only make people bully her more. Those with bare feet didn't fear those with shoes. Ning Shu currently had no burdens to bear and could focus solely on completing the task. Those with bare feet refers to beggars. Beggars aren't afraid of people with shoes because they've already lost everything and don't have much more to lose. Ning Shu opened the faucet and was about to wash her hands when someone grabbed her head from behind and started dragging her towards the toilet. Fuck, this little bitch sure is cocky to actually dare to injure An Rong like that. Right, we have to get revenge for An Rong. Ning Shu looked at these people and thought, here we go again. The reuse of an old skill. They were dragging her to the toilet again. Did she look that easy to bully? These people didn't show Ning Shu even a trace of politeness. A girl grabbed her hair and started slapping her. There was no need to mention how violent she was. Ning Shu grabbed that person's hand. The girl immediately revealed a shocked expression before saying angrily, "You actually dare to fight back? "Sisters, let's beat this bitch to death." So many people were working to beat her, this one person, up. It sure was honorable behavior. Anger stirred in Ningshu's heart. It seemed it was time to test out the effects of taekwondo practice. Ningshu lifted her leg and stomped on the foot of the person behind her that was grabbing her hair. The person behind her immediately cried out from the pain. Releasing Ningshu's hair, she crouched down, covering her foot. "You bitch! Bitch!" The people present became furious. From their point of view, this sort of lowly person should stay still and immediately let them beat her up. However, this bitch actually dared to resist. Without speaking, Ningshu stepped up to the person that was cursing the most and slapped her twice with all her strength. That girl's face started swelling rapidly. The girl was so shocked that she froze. The rest of the group also looked towards Ningshu with disbelief on their faces. Ningshu took advantage of their shock to quickly kick and hit them. The bathroom instantly became filled with cries of alarm and angry cursing. "Beat this bitch to death! Ow!" Those girls soon returned to their senses and rushed towards Ningshu like a swarm of bees, punching and yanking. It was hard for 2 hands to defeat 4. Ningshu's face became all scratched up, but these people didn't fare well either. When Ningshu wasn't pulling at their hair, she was pulling down their skirt. The girls who got their skirts pulled down immediately cried out in alarm and stopped hitting Ningshu to pull their skirts back up. Ningshu punched and pulled at these people. Her fingers were full of yanked off hair, but a lot of her hair also got yanked off. It was damned pitiful. Ningshu leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. The situation became a temporary standoff. These girls had probably been intimidated by Ningshu's fierce brutality because they stood opposite her without making a move. Some of them were rubbing their chest. Several of them had lost hair to Ningshu's claws and had palm prints all over their faces. Ningshu glowered at them. Those that met with her gaze reflectively shifted their eyes away. Ningshu spat. Her face was burning from those deep scratches. She swept one last look over them, then limped out of the restroom. The people in the bathroom could only watch her leave because they were too scared to follow. Ningshu gritted her teeth. Her face really hurt, and her head also hurt so much that it felt numb. She touched her head and discovered that it was bleeding. Fights between women were always unreasonable scenes with lots of hair grabbing. She really envied Ling Shue for being able to look so graceful whenever she made a move, and for her ability to dispose of the opponent without even needing to get close. Earlier, she had been able to knock Anran unconscious just with spiritual pressure. Ningshu felt that it was lucky she had good foresight and went to learn Taekwondo. Otherwise, she would be completely beat up right now. Although she had still gotten injured, she had also been able to injure all the people that usually bullied the original host and make all of their faces as swollen as pig heads. Ningshu hobbled to the nurse office. Her face needed to be treated or had become disfigured. If the original host returned back to her body only to discover that her face was full of scars, she'd probably fall apart. The nurse office was crowded as always. Moreover, all the patients were girls. They were suffering from the same illness, love-struckness. When they saw Ningshu's wretched appearance, expressions of respect appeared on their faces. She had actually been able to sacrifice so much just for the sake of letting the handsome school doctor treat her. What a strong mentality, Ningshu. ... Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 22. Strange Scene. When it was Ning Shu's turn, she sat down on the chair and said, "Help treat my face." The doctor lifted his brows as he looked at Ning Shu. He picked up a cotton swab and dipped it in rubbing alcohol as he asked, "What happened this time? Your head's still swollen, yet you've already gotten injured again." I know that I'm quite popular, but there's still no need to abuse yourself like this. Ay, your face is all scratched up. The doctor jabbed the cotton swab at Ning Shu's face. How ruthless must you be to injure your own face this severely, ah? When the rubbing alcohol made contact with the open wound, Ning Shu's face contorted with pain. Yet next to her, the narcissistic doctor was still yapping nonstop. "Shut up, you're so annoying. This was from people beating me up, it's not self-inflicted," shouted Ning Shu. It was seriously enough already. The doctor pushed up his glasses a little, a ray of light refracting off his eyes. He didn't speak, he simply added more force to his movements. Ning Shu immediately changed her tune and said, "I was wrong. Go more gently." Ning Shu sighed, worn out by her experiences, as she looked at the face full of band-aids that was reflected in the mirror. There was probably a bandage on every single scratch. Ning Shu felt like she was about to be messed up by this doctor. Was there bad blood between the original host and the school doctor? Ning Shu couldn't very well go back to class with a face full of band-aids, so she decided to head back to her apartment. However, right after she stepped out of the school gates, she saw someone that looked like Ling Shui squeeze sneakily into an alley. Ning Shu wanted to follow, but she recalled that Ling Shui was a cultivator. Her senses were very keen, and so she would definitely be able to notice if someone was spying on her. However, Ning Shu's curiosity kept scratching at her heart. In the end, she decided to follow after. She didn't dare to make a single sound. After a moment of thought, she took out 2 handkerchiefs and wrapped them around her feet. This way, there would be less sound when the shoes made contact with the ground. There was no need to ask how Ning Shu knew about this. She had learned it all from watching crappy detective movies. Ning Shu snuck over and poked her head out to look into the alley. She saw that Ling Shui was currently talking with a man. No matter how Ning Shu strained her ears, she still couldn't hear what they were saying clearly. Suddenly, she saw Ling Shui extend her hand and place it on that person's head. The man immediately exposed an elated expression. Ling Shui's back was facing Ning Shu, so she couldn't see her expression. All she could see was that Ling Shui's hair and garments started rising as if there was wind sweeping over her. However, Ning Shu couldn't feel any wind. This scene was abnormally strange. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 23. An Amazing Secret. This scene was seriously strange. Ning Shu covered her mouth in order to prevent herself from making any sounds. For some reason, she had a feeling that she had discovered some huge secret. Not only was this not within the original host's memories, it wasn't even mentioned in this world's storyline. When Ning Shu saw that the wind around Ling Shui was dying down, she turned without hesitation and ran. From the looks of it, whatever Ling Shui was doing, she was almost about finished. Ning Shu squeezed into a bookstore and pretended to look at the books. When she looked up, she saw Ling Shui passing by. She wasn't sure if it was her imagination or not, but the imposing aura Ling Shui gave off seemed to have become even stronger and colder. Ling Shui, who was outside, suddenly sensed a probing gaze. She stopped walking and looked around. Ningshu, who was inside the bookstore, immediately shifted her gaze toward the book in her hand and didn't dare to glance at Ling Shui again. Cultivators were seriously way too unbelievable to be able to sense even just a glance. Ling Shui knitted her beautiful brows. The sensation of being watched had disappeared. After a slight pause, she left. Ningshu only dared to exhale after a while had passed. Her back was covered with cold sweat. It was too scary, expressed Ningshu. How was an ordinary person supposed to deal with the OP female lead? Ningshu rushed back to her apartment and showered before heading to Taekwondo practice before heading to the Taekwondo place to frantically practice. However, she still couldn't suppress the unease in her heart. No matter how much she trained, she was still just an ant to the female lead. Ningshu was seriously stumped by this task. She had no influence, no power, no aid at all. She started re-examining the storyline to see if there was anyone who held a grudge against the male lead or the female lead. She discovered that the boss antagonist of this world was a complete mystery. There was no boss at all. The entire story was about the female lead and male lead acting all domineering and being completely invincible. If it weren't for the limiting factors of this world, the male and female lead probably would have rushed into the cosmos. Meanwhile, Ningshu had no influence that she could call on. Even if she had influence, it would have been useless in the face of the male and female leads' sparkly, golden main character halos. System, I hate you. In her heart, Ningshu tilted her head back and screamed this towards the skies. System, I hate you. In her heart, Ningshu tilted her head back and screamed this towards the skies. Every day, Ningshu trained until it was almost midnight before going home. Today, however, she felt that something was off when she got home. The moment she opened the door, she heard rustling sounds coming from inside. There was even the scent of blood. There was someone here. Ningshu quietly pulled out a steel pipe from behind the door. How could a woman be at ease living on her own without preparing a few safety guarantees? Ningshu's hair was standing on end as she listened to the sounds coming from inside. She gripped the pipe tightly. Borrowing the weak illumination of the streetlight outside the room, she saw that there was something wriggling on the sofa. Without even thinking, she lifted the pipe and smashed it towards the sofa. A sound like a pig was being killed immediately came from the sofa. It sounded like a man, so Ningshu started hitting the person with the steel pipe even more relentlessly. Hey, I said that's enough. Keep on hitting me and I'll shoot. The person spoke, repressing his anger. Go turn on the lights. When Ningshu heard that he had a gun, she was so scared that she almost threw her pipe away. However, she recalled that the pipe was her only weapon. If she threw it away, she'd really end up a defenseless lamb that could only wait to be slaughtered. Turn on the lights. The voice sounded slightly pained. Fuck, I told you to turn on the lights. Ningshu heard the sound of the gun safety being pulled off and was so scared she immediately ran to the door to turn on the lights. She stood at the door, not daring to enter the room. At the same time, she repressed her impulse to run. No matter how fast she ran, she couldn't run faster than a bullet. She looked nervously towards the person on the couch, then cried out in surprise. Doctor? Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 24. The School Doctor? This was the school doctor, right? He was wearing a black windbreaker and holding a pistol. Upon hearing Ningshu's voice, he turned around and reached up to adjust his glasses, only to discover that he wasn't wearing glasses right now. He squinted at Ningshu, then the corners of his mouth hooking up, said, "Come here, help me bandage my wounds." I don't know how. Ningshu looked at the school doctor, whose temperament was completely different from how it was during the day. If it weren't for the fact that he looked identical to the school doctor, there was no way anyone would think that they were the same person. It couldn't be a twin, right? "You're the school doctor, right?" Ningshu pointed her steel rod at the school doctor. The school doctor was speechless for a moment. Then he pointed his gun at her and said, "Come over here." Ningshu, who had yet to see much of the world, was terribly frightened to have a pitch-black... "Buddy, stop screaming. Your papa's playing video games. He's not going to let you into his office." All right. Ningshu, who had yet to see much of the world, was terribly frightened to have a pitch-black gun muzzle pointed at her. She hastily said, "Let's talk things out, talk things out." Her legs trembled as she walked towards the school doctor. The school doctor's face was deathly pale, probably due to the abrupt beating Ningshu had inflicted. "Alki, be quiet. Stop screaming, buddy." The school doctor's face was deathly pale, probably due to the abrupt beating Ningshu had inflicted. As of now, even his lips were colorless. However, his expression was cool and indifferent as he took off his clothes. "Treat my injury." The school doctor pointed towards his back. There was a concealed weapon, yes, let's tentatively call it a concealed weapon, embedded in his back near his shoulder blade. It was practically completely inside his body. There was no way for the school doctor to deal with this injury himself. When he saw that Ningshu was staring blankly, he shouted, "Fuck! Hurry up! All the blood in me's about to run out!" Was this coarse person really that refined school doctor? Ningshu quivered and hastily went to grab the first aid kit. She looked at the barely visible weapon and asked, a bit awkwardly, "How am I supposed to get it out?" "Get it out with tweezers. Hurry up." The school doctor's voice was filled with suppressed pain. He was covered with cold sweat. "I'm taking it out now," said Ningshu. Holding the tweezers, she moved them towards the wound. "Now, your damned sister, Hurry up!" roared the school doctor. Ningshu was startled by him and accidentally jabbed his wound with the tweezers. The school doctor was in so much pain that his entire body shuddered, and he curled up into a ball on the sofa. Ningshu saw that the wound was gushing blood like a fountain, and hastily grabbed some gauze to wipe the blood. She was starting to freak out at the... Ningshu saw that the wound was gushing blood like a fountain, and hastily grabbed some gauze to wipe it up. She was starting to freak out at the sight of so much blood. The school doctor's facial color was starting to turn gray as well. Gathering up her courage, she stepped on him with the leg in order to prevent him from moving around, then quickly pinched the weapon with the tweezers. She abruptly pulled back. It didn't come out. One more time. When the weapon was pulled out, blood spurted all over Ningshu's face. The school doctor who was lying on the sofa had passed out. Ningshu pressed gauze on the injury. She was completely flustered when she saw the blood slowly dye all of the gauze red. She glanced at the deep injury, then looked through the first aid kit for a hemostatic. When she found it, she crushed it and sprinkled it over the wound. It was clearly meant for oral consumption, yet she directly spilled it onto the wound because she thought that it would take too long for it to work if he took it orally. He was bleeding so much. How much blood must be required to sustain this flow? By the time Ningxu finished binding up the school doctor's wound, she was covered with sweat. She reached out and waved her hand below the school doctor's nose. Good, he was still breathing. She fell to the ground. Seeing that the ground was covered with stained gauze, she cleaned it up. Then she saw the gun on the side table that was glowing with a dark light. Her heart chilled. She glanced at the unconscious school doctor, then sneakily took the gun and hid it. Seriously, why didn't he go to the hospital instead of coming to her house if he was injured? Also, how did he get in? Who was this school doctor? He wasn't an ordinary person at all. Why did he decide to become Ace's school doctor? Campus Cultivation Crisis Chapter 25. Thank you for yesterday. When the handsome school doctor woke up, his gaze was vacant and confused. He didn't remember where he was. When things came back to him, he immediately sat up on the sofa. His movements tugged at his injury, and he gasped in pain. "You're awake," a faint voice transmitted over. The school doctor turned around and noticed that there was a woman standing behind him. She was currently holding a bowl and shoving noodles into her mouth. "Who are you?" The school doctor reflexively reached for the gun at his waist. He felt all around and couldn't find it. He even ended up tugging at his wound again and was in so much pain he felt he was about to die. Ningxu swallowed the noodles in her mouth and blinked as she looked at him. The corners of her mouth twitched. Was he here to perform a comedy? "You took something of mine, didn't you?" The school doctor looked at Ningxu with a dark expression. Then his stomach started rumbling. "I remember you now. You're the girl who helped me get the weapon out yesterday." The school doctor started laughing candidly. "Make me a bowl of noodles, too." Ningxu made a sound of agreement, then curled her lips disdainfully as she went to cook noodles for him. His vitality sure was strong to be able to wake up the next day after losing that much blood. Ningxu placed the noodles in front of him, then spoke with a negotiable tone. Uncle? Do I look that old? In the school, all the girls call me Big Brother." The school doctor lifted a bit of noodles and sampled it. "The way I address you isn't important. You're severely injured. You should go to the hospital." Ningxu didn't dare to let such a dangerous person stay in her house. The school doctor smacked his lips and said, "The taste isn't that good. Hey, what did you say?" "I didn't really hear." Ningxu, so shameless. "Just focus on eating." Ningxu rolled her eyes. "That's right. You took my thing, didn't you?" asked the school doctor. "Give it back to me. A little girl like you shouldn't be playing with a dangerous thing like that." Upon seeing the school doctor's refined and elegant manner, Ningxu felt the urge to spit at him. She hastily replied, "What thing? I didn't take anything of yours." "Oh, you must be talking about the concealed weapon. I've put it away. I'll get it for you right now." Ningxu took a box out from below the side table and handed the concealed weapon to the school doctor. This weapon was completely black, ring-shaped, and had sharp corners all along its outer edge. It emitted a faint light. The school doctor glanced at Ningxu, then took the concealed weapon and examined it. After putting it away, he extended his hand and looked at Ningxu again. Ningxu looked at his hand. His palm was faintly yellow with thick calluses. These calluses only formed from doing certain things over a long period of time. This pair of hands didn't fit with his attractive appearance at all. Ningxu extended her hand and shook his. "Hello, hello." The school doctor flung his hand off and said, "What I want is the gun." Where did you put my gun, Ningxu looked at him with alarm and asked, You're going to kill the silence if I give it to you, aren't you? Big bro, take into consider that I did save your life, Us children of the Jianghu repays kindness and takes revenge straightforwardly. There exists no hatred or grudges between us, so let's just forget this encounter and leave it behind in the Jianghu. What the hell are you yapping about? I can dispose of you even without the gun. Using the gun on you is practically a waste of bullets. Hurry up and give me the thing, said the doctor, annoyed. He knitted his brows, giving off a fairly alienating aura. His attitude flipped as fast as the pages of a book. Ningxu looked at his frosty expression and went to get the pistol. As she handed it to the school doctor, she made sure to argue. I just thought it was too dangerous to leave the gun on you. What if it accidentally went off? That's the only reason I put it away. The school doctor took the gun and inserted it into his boot, ignoring Ningxu's word. He stood up and said, Thank you for yesterday. I'm leaving now. Ningxu watched as he walked towards the door. He didn't look injured at all. If it weren't for the fact that she had personally retrieved the weapon from his body yesterday, she wouldn't have believed that he was injured. She opened the door and said to the school doctor with a smile, Uncle, take care. Please don't ever come back. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 26, Next Time. All right. The school doctor towered over Ningxu as he said, Slightly interesting. You are quite interesting. Ningxu was stunned to hear such a cool script line and stared at the school doctor in surprise. This guy couldn't be the male lead Sama, right? She examined the school doctor and compared him to the storyline's description of the male lead. The male lead was a ruthless and despotic person, like the female lead. The two only took a liking to each other because they were so similar. That's why they felt each other worthy to be their match. Ningxu asked, Uncle, who are you? What's your name? The school doctor had seen the confusion flicker across her face. Why do you need to know my name? Haven't you been calling me Uncle this entire time? Then you can just keep calling me Uncle. Ningxu had called him Uncle purely as a malicious joke. He didn't look old at all. Ningxu was only calling him Uncle, relying on the fact that her body was young. Why did she want to know his name? Because she wanted to know whether he was the awesome male lead or not. Ningxu watched as the school doctor left in a cool manner, wearing his large black windbreaker, and felt slightly unwell. She thought about the storyline again. The storyline didn't seem to have said that the male lead was a school doctor. The male lead only suited the bloody fighting and killing scene. Alki, stop screaming, please, buddy. The cats get very resentful when Vlad is in his bedroom and not here in the common room with the whole family, so they just scream in front of the door. For anyone wondering why I have to keep pausing to scream at my cat every few minutes. The male lead only suited the bloody fighting and killing scene. He didn't suit an occupation like a school doctor. If that was the case, who was that guy? There didn't seem to have been any character like this in the story. Ningxu sighed. She felt that the world had changed a lot. What exactly was with this irrelevant character? She had a feeling that this school doctor wasn't a simple person. How could a person that ran around with a gun possibly be a simple person? After cleaning up, Ningxu headed to school. When she passed by the school's announcement board, she found that there was a post about her punishment. Due to the fact that she got involved in a fight, a lot of her course credits were deducted. She would probably be expelled if any more credits were deducted. The post said that she was the only one who had course credits deducted. Nothing happened to the others. She was the only one punished. This was a seriously cruel world. She was an orphan without any power or influence, so she inevitably had to face bullying. Ningxu hated the school, but due to the task, she had no choice but to stay here. This was a place where the strong dwelled. A little fish like her could only be swallowed up. People without family backgrounds shouldn't dream of staying in this school. It wasn't that she was taking the initiative to cause trouble either, yet so many people were teaming up to bully her. It was seriously unbelievable. She walked into the classroom. All the girls who fought with Ningxu yesterday revealed pleased expressions. It must be known that Ace Academy's course credits were very important. They were practically gilded. A person that got expelled by Ace Academy would become the laughingstock of the world. Ningxu was extremely irritated. She hadn't finished the task, and these people kept jumping out to cause her trouble. She decided that the next time she wouldn't fight in the school anymore. Once she left the school, she'd pull a sack over their heads and beat them up until they surrendered. She sat down in her seat and picked up the three-legged table from the ground. She glanced at Ling Xue, who was in front of her. When she recalled the strange scene she happened to see yesterday, she would feel a chill just looking at Ling Xue's back. She didn't know what Ling Xue did to that man, but it probably wasn't anything good. Ling Xue turned around and looked towards Ningxu suspiciously. She asked coldly, "Lin Jia, why do you keep looking at me?" Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 27. Look at me, aren't I pitiful? Ningxu hadn't expected that Ling Xue's senses would be this keen. She had barely been looking for a second before she was caught. It was so unnerving. "Nothing much. I couldn't help but gape at your captivating back," said Ningxu without a trace of sincerity. Ling Xue pressed her lips together. Her eyes contained murderous intent as she looked at Ningxu. Was this girl teasing her? Ling Xue felt that she had been too lenient towards this woman. This ordinary person, this ant, actually dared to tease her. Facing Ling Xue's murderous stare, Ningxu expressed that if Ling Xue wanted to look, then let her look. It was seriously enough. Even praising her for being beautiful didn't work. Ningxu slanted a glare at her and said, "What are you looking at? Feels like you're not as pretty as me." Ling Xue's expression instantly turned ice cold, and she looked at Ningxu like she was looking at a dead object. Ningxu expressed that doing something like rubbing a tiger's butt was addictively exciting. Ningxu's present actions were courting disaster. She had decided that since she was going to die anyways, she might as well make the female lead uncomfortable while she could. Dying sooner or dying later was dying all the same. Ling Xue swept an indifferent glance over her, then turned back to face the front. "You think you're so impressive just because you have a golden finger? Just because you have power doesn't mean you have the right to casually bully others, relying on the grace of the heavens to bestow you. Relying on the grace the heavens bestowed you to willfully toy with other people's lives? Does that seem noble? Ling Jue looked down on ordinary people and viewed them as ants, yet she used her power to deal with these ordinary people. The fudge was with that. Did the ants provoke you in any way? What was with you? Ningshu prattled on like a broken record inside her heart. She felt that she had to borrow some outside power in order to defeat Ling Jue. No matter how skilled a person was at martial arts, he could still be knocked down with one bullet. Speaking of bullets, she recalled the cool school doctor. Ningshu felt that she should go test her luck. After class, she ran towards the nurse office. Originally, she thought that the school doctor might not be there since he was so severely injured. However, when she saw all the female students in the room, she almost bowed down to him. He was seriously dedicated to his work, When the school doctor saw Ningshu, he pushed up his glasses. After all the female students successfully got a bit of the doctor's attention and left, Ningshu said, is your injury all right? The school doctor sat on the sofa and crossed his legs gracefully as he looked at Ningshu. He was the image of easy elegance. Why were you looking for me? Ningshu drew circles on the ground with her foot, looking very bashful. What exactly is it? The school doctor readjusted his gold-rimmed glasses. Without a trace of politeness, he said, Seeing you like this makes me want to puke. This specific type of glasses, very popular in Korea. Boop. Ningshu jumbled cursing, apparently. Uncle, can I discuss something with you? You have to help me, otherwise I'll die. Ningshu crouched down to grab the school doctor's thigh. Hugging someone's thigh is a figurative saying describing the situation when someone bootlicks a more powerful person in order to get benefits, but Ningshu is doing it literally here. The school doctor pushed her hands away, then dusted off his trouser leg as if something dirty had gotten on it. He slanted a glance at Ningshu and said in a cool manner, Why does it feel like you've come to depend on me? For better or for worse, we're comrades in revolution that have gone through trials and tribulations together. You probably don't know how pitiful I am. I've been abandoned by my family, and after being abandoned, I found out that I'm not my parents' biological daughter after all. Now I've even offended the school goddess. The goddess can wipe me out just by moving a finger. Say, don't you think I'm pitiful? The entire school is laughing at me. After getting beaten up, I even got course credits deducted. As she spoke, even she started feeling the original host was truly pitiful. It's quite melodramatic, and also seems quite disastrous. And so, the school doctor looked at Ningshu. Why were you looking for me? She had already said this much. Wasn't her intention to ask for help clear enough? Ningshu pulled out a tissue and blew her nose, then said, Can you lend me your gun? Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 28. I'll look for you tonight. The school doctor lifted his brows at Ningshu, then smiled coldly. Dusting off his white coat, he said, Why should I lend it to you? And even if I let you borrow it, do you know how to use it? I can learn, said Ningshu excitedly. This is a matter of life and death. Uncle, if it weren't for the fact that I had no other options, I wouldn't come to look for you. Ningshu was staking it all. For the sake of borrowing something that could help preserve her life, she was giving up all integrity. The school doctor narrowed his eyes as he asked, Who did you say you offended? Who? Oh, the goddess Ling Shui. Ning Shu blinked as she looked at the school doctor. From up close, it could be seen that the school doctor's skin was really... That the school doc... Sorry. From up close, it could be seen that the school doctor's skin was really great. It was like white jade, flawless and poreless. You actually need a gun to defend against a female student? Snow-white light flashed over the school doctor's glasses. Isn't she just a student? How can you say she's just a student? Ning Shu glanced around, then moved close to the school doctor and said, Ling Shui isn't an ordinary person. If you're going to talk, just talk. What are you getting so close for? Said the school doctor as he leaned away from her. Ning Shu retreated backwards a little and said, Ling Shui isn't an ordinary person. I know. Didn't you just say that? The school doctor knitted his brows. You sure like repeating the same sentence twice. Big bro, can you please catch the main point? Ning Shu felt like this guy was messing with her. Alki! Big bro, can you please catch the main point? Ning Shu felt like this guy was messing with her, but she couldn't do anything about it, even if it was true. Who asked him to be the only person she knew with good things? The school doctor took in Ning Shu's collapsing expression and said, What do you mean by Ling Shui isn't an ordinary person? It couldn't be that she's Superman, Spider-Man, or Iron Man, right? Ning Shu, incomprehensible cursing. No, Ling Shui is a Taoist immortal. Do you believe if I say she can kill with telekinesis? Ning Shu's expression was completely serious. She thought he would laugh when he heard this. Unexpectedly, the school doctor actually said with a serious expression, Maybe she's a demon. Chinese demons are more like spirits and are born from things like rocks, bamboo, and things embedded with meaning once they absorb spiritual energy for thousands of years. They can cultivate and are not inherently evil, but they often have antagonistic relationships with humans. Ning Shu. Ha 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 ha. She was certain that this bastard was teasing her. She was clearly talking about a very serious matter, a matter in which human life was beyond value in comparison. Ning Shu felt a loneliness as if she was the only one sober in a world full of drunk people. Ning Shu was so agitated, her mouth was about to froth. If he didn't want to help her, then whatever. Was it fun to tease people? I'll look for you tonight, said the school doctor. Ning Shu hastily covered her chest. Why would you look for me? I'm a good lady. The school doctor sneered. You don't want the thing anymore? She wants, of course she wants. Ning Shu hastily said, I'll sweep the couch tonight in preparation to welcome you. The school doctor. ... Having obtained a definite reply from the school doctor uncle. Alki! Having obtained a definite reply from the school doctor uncle, Ning Shu no longer felt weak when facing Ling Shui's murderous glare. She even glowered back. Ning Shu expressed that she would feel very pleased every time she saw Ling Shui's annoyed expression. Meanwhile, Ling Shui was done with tolerating Ning Shu. In the past, she had misgivings about doing anything to Lin Jiajia. Because Lin Jiajia was an ace student. If an ace student was to go missing, it attracted a lot of unnecessary problems. However, right now, she was already all alone and no longer had a family background to support her. Cat stole my cell phone. All right, then. However, right now she was already all alone and no longer had a family background to support her. It was about time to make her disappear. Ling Shui loathed the way this girl always looked at her with that strange gaze. It caused her to have the misperception that she was seen through. Ningxu didn't know that the female lead Sama had already decided to kick her out of school. Currently, she was eagerly anticipating the school doctor's arrival. If she had a life-preserving object on hand, she would feel a bit more confident in completing this shitty task. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 29, Mutual Benefits. Ningxu had waited until midnight before the school doctor finally arrived. Moreover, he had come in directly by climbing over the balcony. After he got in, he slowly walked towards the room. Ningxu couldn't even let a trace of her dissatisfaction show through and went to get tea and pour water for the monsieur on the couch. The school doctor was wearing a black windbreaker again. She didn't know if it was the same one as before. However, every time she saw his windbreaker, she would feel like she had a lot of comments to spit, but didn't know where to start commenting. Interesting thing is that the comment section in most Chinese platforms is a section for roasting and ridiculing. The term comes from another term that translates roughly to expelling stinkiness. But since the original term was in a dialect, a different pair of homophones is now commonly used, and the meaning is commonly to retort without giving the person or the subject face, aka to retort without holding back. The school doctor glanced at Ningxu and lifted the plain boiled water. However, he set it down again after glancing at it. Then he took out something that was contained in a leather cover and threw it to Ningxu. Ningxu hastily caught it. She glanced at the school doctor, then opened it. It was actually a pistol. The pistol felt very light and easy to use, unlike the previous one, which felt very heavy. This is a lady's pistol. There are two safety bolts. It's suitable for you to use, the school doctor said indifferently. Ningxu sniffled and looked at the school doctor with tears in her eyes. Uncle, you really are a good person. I practically have no way to repay. I don't want you to repay with your body. You're ugly. The school doctor shot a disdainful glance at her, then handed her a magnetic card. This is the location of a shooting range. You can go there to learn. Ningxu took the card. She was starting to feel uneasy. Why did he suddenly become this thoughtful? Ningxu asked, Uncle, then what do you need me to do? The school doctor grinned. Of course I need you to do something. You'll know when the time comes. Our relationship is simply one of mutual benefits. Ningxu, please speak the human language. I don't understand. The school doctor got up, then left. He didn't leave from the balcony, but through the door. As Ningxu watched the black windbreaker flutter in the wind, she felt like spitting comments again. She grasped the gun and felt a surge of strength and courage fill her body. It all came from this exquisite little thing. Ningxu had made all sorts of handsome poses before putting the card away. No matter what the school doctor's goal was, at least she was a little more protected with this thing in her possession. Ningxu didn't feel like bothering with school the next day, since she couldn't understand the lessons even if she went. It wasn't that Ningxu's IQ wasn't high enough, but that the material was too high-end. She felt like going to class was a waste of time. So she went to the shooting range with the car in order to learn how to shoot. She found the so-called shooting range by following the address given on the card. She thought that the shooting range would be some dazzling place, or at the very least a classy place. However, this little retail store in front of her, it sold all sorts of things, including pornographic magazines and all kinds of restricted products. Was this really the shooting range? The moment Ningshu walked in, an old man came up to greet her. She didn't know if it was because there were too many unhealthy things around, but the old man's smile seemed very vulgar. Uncle, I wanted to ask if this was a shooting range, stammered Ningshu. The old man's expression turned serious for a moment before he started smiling again. Young lady, this is just a grocery store, not some shooting range. You're in the wrong place. But it was clearly this address. Ningshu suddenly recalled that most connections required tokens or secret codes. So she took out the card that the school doctor gave her and said, Uncle, look at this. That old man took it and glanced at it. Then he dug out a machine from the messy floor and swiped the card on it. He glanced at Ningshu and said, Come with me. Ningshu put the card away and followed the old man into the grocery store. The old man opened a thick door and said, Go in. All right. Thank you to the one person watching and whoever is watching after the stream ends. This is going to be my last chapter for this video. So, but we're getting into the exciting parts. And after this chapter, we will be halfway through with this arc, and then we get into the next arc, which is really good. So, at least I think, if I'm remembering what the next arc is. Let me check. Yes, the next arc is really good. All right. Campus Cultivation Crisis, Chapter 30, Shooting Range. Ningshu then carefully walked in. As expected, a different paradise existed. The sight was appropriately dazzling, bright, and clean. This was more like a shooting range. The room was filled with partitioned-off stalls. All the people in the stalls were wearing earplugs and focused on shooting the target in front of them. The entire shooting range was filled with the sound of guns. Ningshu thought about it, then felt quite defeated by this world. It was clearly the simplest school campus storyline, yet now it has become a gun battle story. Ningshu stood there, not knowing what to do. There didn't seem to be any employees there that handled reception. Uncle, I want to practice shooting. Where should I go? Ningshu asked a man that was wiping his sweat. The man glanced at Ningshu. It was only a single glance, but it made Ningshu feel as if she was standing in the middle of a pile of corpses. She felt a chill come over her, as if she was facing a sea of blood. His baleful aura was too intense. This person had definitely killed a lot of people before. Where did this little girl come from? Why is old Lee letting random people in? Get out, said that person coldly. His brows creased, and a threatening aura shot towards Ningshu. Ningshu felt as if she was facing a beast that was contemplating its next meal. She saw the ruthlessness in the person's eyes. He was rubbing his gun as he narrowed his eyes at Ningshu's head. He seemed to be itching to put a bullet through her. Mommy, this world was too dangerous. She wanted to go home. Ningshu hastily fished out her card and said, I was introduced to this place by someone. When that person saw the card in Ningshu's hand, his face immediately froze. Then he tried to force a smile, causing his face to contort in a tragic sight. So you're someone Psycho introduced. The second stall is Psycho's spot. You can go there. That person pointed at the stall as he said, You can just practice in his spot. Psycho? Could he be talking about the school doctor, Uncle? Such a fierce person actually changed his attitude this much upon seeing his card. How savage was the school doctor, Uncle, exactly? Just his name was enough to make such a fierce person treat her gingerly as if she was a tiger. Since the school doctor uncle's name was this effective, of course she had to keep climbing the pole. Ningshu said, "Uncle, I don't know how to shoot. Could you teach me?" That person's face spasmed. Then he said, "Of course." Ningshu thanked the school doctor uncle in her heart for allowing her to get a free instructor. "You know how to load the magazine, right?" "I don't." "You know how to pull the bolt, right?" "I don't." "You at least know how to pull the trigger, right?" "I don't." The man rubbed the gun at his waist and narrowed his eyes at Ningshu's head. Then he seemed to be hit by apprehensions, as immediately he gave a contorted smile. "I'll have to trouble Uncle." Quite a lot of people had gathered around. When they heard what Ningshu said, they all jeered at her for being a rookie, and for being even worse than a rookie. What she didn't know, she didn't know. She had never shot a gun before, so she didn't feel that it was embarrassing. If she knew how to shoot, she wouldn't come to this place. "Don't make a fuss. This girl was introduced by Psycho," said the man with a forced smile. Upon hearing the name Psycho, everyone around immediately scattered like fleeing birds. In just a few seconds, they were all gone. The way they acted was like they would die just hearing this name. Ningshu. ... How savage was the school doctor, really? However, Ningshu didn't feel like the school doctor was anyone that amazing. He even got injured by someone just a couple of days ago. He seriously sucked. "Uncle, we can start. Don't worry, I'll definitely do my best to learn." Thus, Ningshu started her shooting lessons. With an instructor who seemed to get the urge to put a bullet through her head every once in a while, Ningshu learned rapidly. Human potential was truly limitless. And that is the end of the stream for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me. We got through chapters 1 through 30 today. And next time I will start with chapter 31 and we'll get working on finishing up this arc. Have a good night.